No sound. Thanks a lot, Brian. It is Tuesday night, East Lansing, Michigan. My name is Jim Comparoni, publisher, SpartanMag.com. Come on in. Sorry about the false start. Not in mid-season form yet, although those of you that have watched a lot of Spartan Mag Lives know that sometimes I forget to hit the on-air button and we go quiet. Hopefully you can hear now. Let's see. I'm sure it's working. Let me know if you can hear it okay. Anyway, my name is Jim Comparoni, publisher. Jim Comparoni, publisher, SpartanMag.com. It's still no sound? Well, let's wait and see. I know this is like a 45-second delay here. So, all right, we're good. All right, there we go. Not mid-season form, but we'll consider this our scrimmage. This is preseason scrimmage. If you don't know what this nonsense is about, my name is Jim Comparoni, publisher, SpartanMag.com. It is the church of what's happening now with Michigan State sports. The Underground Bunker message board is the daily narrative on Michigan State sports and all things Michigan State. And if you're not a subscriber to Spartan Mag, get on over there, check it out. We'd love to have you as a subscriber. In the meantime, subscribe to this channel if you have not already. Give us a like. We really appreciate that. Great to be back with you. We've had a lot of time off in the summer. Hope you're all having you've been having a great summer out there, Michigan State fans out there in Spartan Landum. Ready to go. September 1st, Chippewa's coming to town. Friday night, Spartan Stadium. A lot of you will be there. Some of you will be watching from remote locations, maybe up north. Maybe somewhere across the country, across the globe. But you're all going to be interested in the Michigan State Spartan. It's going to be a very interesting year. There's some talent on this team. There's some depth on this team. Can it get all stapled together? Can they get it rolling in time to have a good season, a surprising season? There's a lot of optimism over there inside the building. They believe in themselves. The coaches believe they've got something. We'll see how it all comes together. A lot of work to do, and we'll be talking about some of those questions today. We will be fielding questions, mailbag style here. Spartan Mag subscribers over at SpartanMag.com have posted on the Underground Bunker message board questions for to be entertained tonight. I'm not expecting any guests. We might have one on, a diehard Spartan guy who's fired up. We might have him. Big Movie, we're going to have him later. There's a chance he might call, but might give him a little bit of time off. Bring him back maybe a little bit, maybe next week, something like that. But for right now, hey, questions, mailbag, that type of stuff. Going to have a lot of fun with it, and also some new rankings of different kind. Question number 1 from M. Blank from Rochester, Michigan. He says, which Michigan State football position group do I expect to be the most improved from last season? In the meantime, go over there, put some questions over in the comments area. We'll be getting to those questions later as well. We've got a few other questions to go over here tonight, not a Tuesday night in East Lansing, Michigan. Which unit do I expect to be the most improved? Can I say the defense overall? Just the defense in general? Can't get much worse, right? Outside of the top 100 nationally the last 2 years, it's got to get better. Can't get worse. Last year, all the injuries, 27 different starters on defense. It's got to get better. That front 6 is good. Front 7, if you will, against some opponents. Going to be solid up there. Going to be able to stop the run against most opponents. That'll help a young secondary that has talent. So can I say defense in general? If I didn't say defense in general, running game's got to be better. We'll talk about that in a moment. Got a question on that coming up. In terms of small, specific position groups, I'm going to say the linebackers. I'm going to say linebackers will be the most improved. Last year, Cal Halliday was pretty good. Rolled up a lot of tackles. Not perfect. He's added some weight. He'll be better. He's been solid. I think he'll be a little bit better now. I'm intrigued to see what he looks like with a little more mass and all that experience he has. And I think that Halliday will have the luxury of not having to play down after down after down. I think he's going to have a little bit more rest because there's better second stringers behind him. Jacoby Windman will be playing middle linebacker this year. Leader, 250 pounds. That's a plus size inside linebacker. Knows the game. Came in, became a leader right away last year, which is hard to do for a transfer. Jacoby Windman, it's going to be excellent, I think. The tandem of Windman and Halliday, I think it's going to be a lot better than Halliday and Van Sumeren. Van Sumeren did what he could, but I don't know if he quite had a total handle on everything. Got a free agent tryout. We'll see how he does this month. good athlete. We'll see if he comes around there, but I think that Halliday and Windman will be better than what they had last year. Brule at the end of the season started to get a handle on things, started to come along. He can play the slot linebacker when they go with a 4-3. He can also sub in for Halliday and play a weak side linebacker. He can play in there a little bit as well. When you've got Jordan Hall, true freshman, might be able to help a little bit. Nateote, third year, quality backup. Got a little dinged up in the spring game. Might be a little slow out of the chute this August, but he's a quality backup. So I think linebacker play as part of a good front six, I think it's going to be an excellent Big Ten linebacking tandem because it's a 4-2-5. The third linebacker, if you will, the slot linebacker, the nickel. Like I said, sometimes it's going to be Brule if they go with a 4-3 against probably Minnesota, Michigan, Iowa. When it's a 4-2-5, who's the slot? Maybe it's Angelo Gross. Maybe it's Chester Kimbrough again, not sure. Ade Willie was repping there last year, was a little bit injured, never got on the field, but they kind of liked him there. Does Dylan Tatum move inside and become a slot linebacker at some point? I think it's possible. But I like the personnel there at the linebacker level. Question number 2 from Matt in Ravenna, Michigan via East Lansing. He says, which freshman on the basketball team do you see competing for playing time early? Didn't see that coming. Got a basketball question here. Hold on a second. Let's see. Well, the freshmen, everybody's excited about the freshman class, right? Been watching them this summer over at Moneyball. And Moneyball's not the greatest place to judge what a player has top to bottom in his game. But you can see some things. You can see some shooting form. You can see defensive lateral movement, which is something I was looking for in Jackson Kohler, the sophomore, an area he needs to improve. I think he showed that this summer. Freshman, everybody's excited about Xavier Booker. We've been talking about him over at the Final Forum message board at SpartanMag.com. I've been telling people, and on this show last spring, Michigan State fans, be patient with him. Yes, he was ranked the number 1 high school player in the country at this time last year. I was like, man, I don't know about that. Ends up, I think, number 13 in the On3 industry rankings. The recruiting class nationally, a lot of the experts believe it's one of the worst in the last 25 years. Nothing against Booker. I'm just saying if you're number 1 or number 13 right now, that might equate to number 40 in years past. Just saying. He's got a nice shot release, good straight line speed, good leaping ability. In terms of knowing the game without the ball, he has a long, long way to go. Playing defense, long way to go. Putting a body on somebody, rebounding, long way to go. Setting a screen, new to him. Moving without the ball, new to him. Long, long way to go. Freshman with the best chance to play. Jeremy Fears is capable of playing, but Michigan State's so crowded in the backcourt. With A.J. Hogard playing some point, Tyson Walker playing some point, Trey Holloman's around there. Holloman's improved. Fears is good. Fears could, if he were at other programs, he would march right in and start right away. He's going to have to wait his turn at Michigan State, but he's got some ability. Medium range shot. Creativity to the rack. Good. He's strong for a first year, for a freshman. He's going to play. Cohen Carr is a guy with all kinds of horsepower. I'm thinking he's like 6'7". You've seen the Moneyball highlights. I was going to put some Moneyball highlights together for a video thing today. Ran out of time. Maybe next week. But you've all seen the Cohen Carr highlights at Moneyball this summer. Crazy athlete. 6'6.5", 6'7", thick. I didn't get a real good look at his lateral movement. I don't know much about his basketball IQ on defense. But to get minutes, you have to play defense first. Can he play defense on a 4, on a stretch 4, on an undersized 4? I would think so. I thought that about Marvin Clark a few years ago, and it never quite came around. Kenny Goins eventually became a very good defender on stretch 4s. Down the road, maybe Clark can do that if he's around that long. Great horsepower, great dunker. I made the point, the statement last week that he's the best dunker in the history of Moneyball, in my opinion, overtaking Miles Bridges. That doesn't mean everything, but the vertical horsepower is something to behold. Good athlete. How's that translate to lateral movement? Sometimes guys with great ups don't necessarily have great lateral movement. I'm thinking of someone like Marquise Gray. Did not move well laterally. Could really jump. But Carr, would seem to have the athleticism and strength to be able to play defense first, and that's what you have to do initially to get on the court. And there will be minutes open at the 4. I think Malik Hall will start at the 4. I think Booker comes off the bench, but he's got a lot to prove. I think there's a chance at the 4, if Carr plays the 4, I haven't talked to Izzo about it yet, but if Carr plays the 4, I think there's a chance that Carr comes off the bench before Booker. A lot of that needs to be sorted out, and like Izzo says, the players will make up their own playing time. My hope for Michigan State basketball and for the young men on the team is that Booker is a good kid, and he's taken coaching well to this point, and he needs to continue to listen and work and listen, and not assume that because he was ranked real high that he's entitled to 30 minutes a game or 12 minutes a game. He's got to listen and work and work and work. Carr's got the horsepower to do it right away. Normand, I liked what I saw about him last week, and I've not seen them play at Breslin or practice at Breslin. I'm just going by Moneyball, which is not always the greatest indicator. But for a guy that's supposed to be a shooter, when I've watched him this summer, maybe he hasn't looked great in that area. He's got a good reputation and good credentials in that area. But the last game that I saw from him, he did shoot it really well. He's a guy that does jump well. I'm wondering about his lateral movement as well. So he has a few things to prove on a stacked roster. So I think Carr right now is the guy that has a chance to play some defense and get in there. And I don't know if I want to say play the most minutes right away. I think Fears is the most all-around equipped, but he's joining a roster that's stacked at that position. Question number 3. I didn't see who wrote this question, so I feel a little bad about that. Let me see if I can. I want to give the guy credit. He took time to post. Anyway, it's a recruiting question. He says the class of 2024 is still low in number. How many more guys will commit to Michigan State, and where do we, Michigan State, finish in the Big Ten recruiting rankings? He says, I know we're around number 11 in the Big Ten right now. Have some quality guys, but we need to get more. That's what he says. And you're right, Michigan State, 12 commitments, and I like all 12 of them. No reaches. You got to remember last year Michigan State ended up with 16 high school players in the recruiting class, number 22 in the country in the On3 industry rankings. How much room is there this year? Last year they had 16. They had 15 for a long time and added Phillip Davis late. So how many would they have room for this year? If last year 12 to 15, last year 15, now you have 12. I mean, room for 3 or 4 more, I think that's possible. Tucker is usually guarded about that information, about how many scholarship slots they have. And right now, quite frankly, they're over 85 in terms of scholarship level players. There's 2 or 3 or 4. I don't know this for a fact, but I suspect that they're at Michigan State based partly on, in-state tuition, other type of scholarships, name, image, and likeness, and some of those things. So they've had some, they've initiated attrition in the past. Could that happen again? Possibly. They want to really feed this roster from the high school level. Last year they had a lot of transfers coming in. I'm not sure all of those are scholarship guys. If they had won more recruiting battles to this point and had 16 or 17, they would take them and have 19 if they had that many. But they'll stop at 16 if they don't want to take any reaches. So they're at 12. And right now recruiting is kind of leveled off a little bit. You don't see Michigan State going off and throwing out a bunch of new offers at a lot of places. Jason Killip had a post a moment ago about Jason Brown, the running back in Seattle. Michigan State's got a commitment from running back already. Anthony Carey out of Florida. Jason Brown, he's looking at Michigan State and Oregon. There's a chance Michigan State might be able to get 2 running backs in this class. Running backs these days are not shying away from competing with one another. Most running backs know that they need a tag team partner, and Michigan State has been in with Jason Brown for a long time. Since last fall, Michigan State went out there and watched him live during the fall. Brought him in. He likes Michigan State. He's ranked the number 10 running back in the country, number 158 in the nation. Michigan State continues to recruit David Stone, who's going to be making a decision later this month on August 26th. But most indications we're getting is the Oklahoma Sooner is going to be hard to beat for David Stone. Michigan State's been recruiting him for a long time. At one point last year, he was giving indications that he was all but leaning heavily toward Michigan State. In fact, was, if not, I don't want to say a silent. I don't want to throw that out there. But Michigan State thought they were in really good shape. And they kind of were. But last season wasn't great. That didn't help. And Sooners came on strong. He's from Oklahoma originally. He plays at IMG in Florida. Number 7 player in the country. Michigan State needs young defensive tackles. So they're going after him hard. And they will continue to go after him hard after the decision. But I'm not anticipating Michigan State getting that one. So there's a few that they're still after. They're going after Francis Brewu, who is committed to Pittsburgh, 6'2", 270 out of Columbus, Ohio, Worthington High School. 3-star type of guy. He visited Michigan State last weekend, or 2 weekends ago, for the Spartan Dog Con. Was that last weekend or the weekend before? Anyway, during the Spartan Dog Con weekend. So they're working on him. Michigan State needs a defensive tackle or 2. So to answer your question, how many more will Michigan State get? I wouldn't be surprised if it lands at 15 or 16 like it did last year. And there's not as many 4-stars, so I wouldn't expect number 22 in the country. I'm thinking somewhere in the top 40. And a lot of people will be like, man, that doesn't sound great. And if Mel Tucker heard this right now, he might say, no, man, we're going to get more than that. We're going to, because they want to have top 10 classes. It's not going to happen this year. First of all, not a lot of room. Secondly, they've gone after some quality 4-stars. They've got a few, but not really, knocking them dead like maybe they thought they would 15 months ago. But they're doing okay. Those of you that have followed Michigan State recruiting, it's not the easiest place to recruit. A lot of competition out there nationwide. Midwest has some talent, but not heaps of it. So it takes a lot of great evaluation skills, player development skills, and that's where it's done. And if they start winning, then maybe they can start winning some more of those battles for those 4-stars. They won some last year. Ended up losing some decommitments. But no, I mean, I'd like to sit here and tell you, hey, man, hold on. Great things are happening. They're going to have a top 15 class and try to sell subscriptions that way. But I've been doing this for 30-plus years, and those of you that have been following SpartanMag for a long time know that homie don't play that. Don't play that. Credibility's been number 1 for 30 years for us. Been trying to get it, and we work hard every day to sustain that. So I'm just telling you, from where I'm sitting right now, I'm thinking a class top 40, top 35, something like that. And I've always said that, and I've said this for years, I can't really tell much of a difference between a class that's ranked number 26 in the country and 44. Anything between 25 and 45 to me is just about the same. It depends on who does the best job of evaluation for 25 to 45, who does the best job of fitting their needs. Like Michigan State needs some defensive tackles, in my opinion. And, from 25 to 45 classes that are ranked there, you might have some good quality recruiting classes that didn't have a lot of room. So they couldn't be real hard to have a top 25 class when you don't have a lot of room. I think Michigan State might be in that category this year. Bottom line is, there's good depth in the program. I don't know if there's going to be as much after this season, like forced attrition, if you will. I think they like a lot of the people that they have. Maybe that'll change. I don't know. But they like the depth of the program right now. They like the athletes. They like what they're looking like, the size and so forth. They want to keep adding to it. So they feel good about the bodies in this program. We'll see what it looks like this year. A lot of first-year role guys this year. I think next year you'll have more guys that are in their second year in a role. You have a quarterback who's in his second year. You'll have more running backs that are in their second year. You'll have more receivers that are in their second year. You'll have more tight ends that are established. They'll lose something on an offensive line, and then they'll lose Windman. But defense will start to become more veteran in the secondary next year. So I think it's like a 16-month situation right now. And I got to tell you that the things that the coaches are saying about the depth and the bodies, it's not just lip service. I talk to people on the inside, and those are the things the coaches are saying to people on the inside, not just for public consumption. There's some optimism there. Schedule's a bear. Schedule is tough. You could be a good team this year with Michigan State's schedule and go 7-5 if all those teams are as good as they're supposed to be. Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State, Washington. But you never know. I mean, at this time last year, let me look over here. Are we getting some trolling going on? Not seeing any yet, but when we do, we kind of escort them to the door, and it's okay. We know kids will be kids and so forth. What was I talking about? I mean, at this time last year, you looked at the top 10, and Texas A&M was a top 10 team. They went 5-7. This time last year, Wisconsin was top 20. They ended up firing their coach. So Washington is supposed to be top 10. Penn State's supposed to be top 10. What are they going to look like in September and November? It's college football. We don't know. We've not seen any of these teams play. We just think about history and what teams are supposed to be. Hey, this time last year, Michigan State was top 20, right? So anyway, what do we have here? Question number 4. This is from WX Spartan 23 from Parts Unknown. He says, is this the toughest Michigan State team to read in a while? He says, good results in 2021, less than stellar in 2022. Now, how do we follow it up? Can't imagine it's easy to get a read. That's from WX Spartan 23. And I agree. It's a very difficult team to read. Very difficult. And, I mean, you lose a quarterback early. You lose your best player, your best receiver. You're losing 70% of last year's pass game receptions. You've got major X factors at quarterback, 2 of the wide receiver positions, plus the first and second wide receiver off the bench, X factors. X factor at punter, X factor at placekicker, X factors of the young secondary. Running backs, X factors. There's some talent in there, but they're X factors. A lot of talent in there, though. Noah Kim, Caton Hauser, Nathan Carter, Jaron Mangum, at running back. Malik Carr, talented, ready to block and break through. That's what we're hearing. Haven't seen it yet. Receivers, don't know. Kicker, don't know. But there's talent there. So college football, the cyclical nature of college football, Michigan State has a lot of influx of new talent. Some openings that were not anticipated, quarterback and wide receiver. So hard to get a read for sure. But, you look back at some of the red letter linchpin seasons in recent Michigan State history. 1999 when Nick Saban had his breakthrough in year number 5, coming off a 1998 team where they didn't go to a bowl game, ended up 6-6. Back then, 6-6 would not get you in a bowl game. Nick Saban in year 4 didn't go to a bowl game at Michigan State. Lost to Colorado State that year. And the best player, Cedric Irvin, went pro early. Coming back in 99, they had been stacking talent, had a lot of tough guys that had redshirted. And then Bill Burt comes of age a little bit. Plaxico Burress, who was kind of hot and cold as a rookie sophomore in 98, boom, he becomes Plaxico Burress in 99. Hubert Thompson, boom, becomes Hubert Thompson for 1 year, right? Robert Smith gets better. So all of a sudden, a lot of, Cedric Irvin's gone. No one saw that Lloyd Clemens was going to come down the pike and be a quality running back as a walk-on. I mean, there was no running backs in sight. That team goes 10-2, finishes top 10 in the country. 2013, coming off a 2012 team that had very good defense, but a terrible offense. 2012, a lot of injuries on the offensive line. Andrew Maxwell struggled as the quarterback. Quarterback battle, Andrew Maxwell, Tyler O'Connor, even Damian Terry, right? And nobody saw Connor Cook coming down the pike. Nobody saw Jeremy Langford coming down the pike. The rest of them, Curtis Drummond, and on down the line. So all of a sudden, boom, 2013, you're the number 3 team in the country. Didn't see it coming. So it's a tough team to read, kind of like those. I'm not saying this is a top 10 team, but tough to read. But it's not like Northwestern where you just have like no bodies, no talent. There's talent. We'll see if the coaches can get it all on the same page and staple together. That's what we have to see. Let's go over here to the comments area. And we appreciate everybody that's checking in with us on a Tuesday night in East Lansing, Michigan. Come on in. If you're new to the show, my name is Jim Comparoni, publisher of SpartanMag.com. Been the publisher of SpartanMag.com since 1867. That's a lie, but it's been a long time. and we're very happy about the subscribers and the support that we have, and we'd like for any of you to become subscribers. Go over to SpartanMag.com. Subscribe to this channel in the meantime. Give us a like. We appreciate that. But we would really, we'd love to have you over there as a subscriber to Spartan Magazine. SpartanMag.com, not Spartan Magazine. We used to have a magazine, a print version, but we got rid of that a few years ago to focus on the website, and we're really happy with the way the website's
very happy
going
about
the subscribers and the support that it keeps growing, and we appreciate the support that we have. I am going to, let's see, I need to send out a tweet here. Just got something. Look out. All right, just checking to see what was going on there. All right, I got to send this tweet. We are on the air via Spartan Mag Live. Join us here. Gather round. That should work. All right, let's go over to the comments area. Let's see what we got. We got MJ, hello from Hong Kong. When I said at the outset that we might have Michigan State fans from all over the world, I was thinking about MJ. Glad that he's here. Hope everything's great in Hong Kong. Thanks for joining us again, MJ. Also, early at the top of the show, we had a false start, didn't have the sound going. Finally got that straightened out. But in the meantime, we'll go with those guys as the starting five. MJ from Hong Kong, he's running the point. JC 1829. Now we're gonna put JC 829 at the shooting at the point because he chimed in first, telling us that the audio was out. That's a leader. That's a leader, not afraid to hear his own voice, not afraid to step forward in front of a crowd and hold people accountable. Appreciate JC 1829. You're on the point tonight. Got MJ at the 2. Why not? I'll bet he wears number 23. Brian V, he's at the 3. And K for Kawhi. He's your stretch 4. Spartian down low at the 5. Appreciate all those guys. What do we have here? Brad Forshenko is checking in from Austin, Texas. Good to hear him. Good to see him. Jop Bear. Yep, I said Michigan State 12. No, that's what I said. Anyway. Brian V, whatever he's saying, I'm sure it's, well, I don't know if it's brilliant. All right, Tim D, Go Green from Toronto. He's got Buffalo Bills in his picture there. A lot of Bills fans at Toronto. I know that. It's a Bills city, which is interesting. Not much of an Argonauts city. They like the Bills. Those that like football in Toronto. I kind of wish that the Argos had more support up there. I feel bad for them a little bit. But I got respect for the Bills, that's for sure. K for Kawhi says, met some Korean Spartans in Sangnam last month. I don't know if I pronounced that correctly, but that's good to hear. They must have been here as students and went back home to Korea. That's cool. Julie and Mark say, can I get an amen? Yes, Julie and Mark, you can. Because this is the church of what's happening now with Michigan State sports. Spartan Mag, ladies and gentlemen. MJ says, where's Big Mooby? I talked to Big Mooby a couple times this week, texted with him a little bit also, invited him to call in if he wants to. Mooby's got his ear to the ground really good, but all right, I'll level with it. He might be going to practice once or twice this week, and I just didn't think that if he's going to practice, it might not be great to come on and do and talk, breaking things down. I don't want to be picking his brain on what he saw and those type of things. Once the season starts, it's better because we're talking about games that are public and so forth. We'll have him on, and there's a need to know type of thing there a little bit. I probably said too much already, but Mooby, we love him. He'll be on soon. He might call in tonight. We'll have to wait and see. Bill Husian says, does there seem to be a different sense of urgency from the coaching staff this season, especially with many of the coaches being in the last year of their contracts? There's always high urgency with coaches. I mean, that never ends with college football coaches. They work harder than any people I've ever met in any profession, and they've got tremendous pressure on them because they're good, they're well paid, but they're going against coaching staffs who are also well paid. The people on the other sideline, they're getting paid millions of dollars to beat you, and they're up all night, 18, 19 hours a day. Always urgency. Do I think that Scotty Hazelton feels a little bit more sense of urgency? Yes. I think he's a positive, high-energy guy that's going to make the best of any situation, but he knows they've not been good on defense the last 2 years. He knows last year deserves a mulligan. Is he pleased that he's back for a fourth year? I'm sure that he is. Is he confident that he can establish himself and his defense as being a good, solid, quality Big Ten defense now and better going forward? Yes, I'm sure he's confident that they'll do that. I'm sure he's confident. Now, urgency, yeah, I think Mel Tucker in some ways is more relaxed. You're seeing more of his personality in press conferences now this year than in the past. I think in the past he's been straight-laced to the point of being clinical, diplomatic, presidential, maybe trying to be too right, too scripted for what maybe he thought that people and fans would want to see. I think he's more loose this year, and I think fans can relate to that more. Now, the Mel Tucker you're seeing now is the guy that a lot of us have seen off podium for 3 years. He's a cool guy. He's a good guy to be around. And he's been around some great football teams, and he knows what a good football team looks like. He's trying to get it to that level. The quality control needs to tighten up. He knows that, and in that way, there is urgency. Mr. Bowman says, hello, Comp, been a while. MJ says, for the first time, the helmets are fire, he says. And MJ says, please do not change the helmets. So I'm not sure what he means there. Brendan Dragon says, checking in from Miami Beach. George Page, the former guitar player and keyboard player for Surrender Dorothy, one of the top 25 bands in East Lansing music history, is George Page. He says, Comp, great to be back live. What are your thoughts on the quarterback situation? It sounds like they may run more with mobile athletic quarterbacks. Thanks. Run more? I think that they would like to have that, because that opens things up when the defense has to account for that quarterback as a potential ball carrier. It just opens things up in the RPO game. Michigan State has a little bit of RPO, and zone read will be in there. Not to the point that they're going to be exposing the quarterbacks all the time to a lot of things, but the more you can establish the quarterback as a run threat, it opens things up. It makes it harder to defend, and they're recruiting to that. Kim's got some quickness. Hauser's got some quickness. Levitt is a good athlete. They got a commitment from the Hasselbeck kid from Massachusetts. He's an excellent athlete, great lacrosse player, and is an excellent runner. So like I said on the VCast last week, Michigan State and Jay Johnson, they have a type in terms of a type of quarterback. You can see it now, the type of quarterback that they're going after. Secondly, they don't want to get stuck where all the chips are in one quarterback. They'd like to have 2.5 quarterbacks ready for a variety of reasons, especially in this era of transfer portal, name, image, and likeness, and people coming to poach your players. They want to get a lot of people available. So more running from that position. Thorne ran a little bit last year, got hurt early. It ran a little bit the year before, got hurt, and that took that part away a little bit. Noah Kim's got his fleet of foot. He's got some quickness. They talk about him being one of the top 20 fastest players on the roster. That surprises me a little bit. I wouldn't have thought that. He was asked about that, and he shrugged it off. I think he's got some speed, and he's put on some muscle, but he's still kind of slight in terms of his skeletal makeup. I'm not sure that's a guy you want to expose to a lot of hits. But here and there, sprinkling it in a couple times a game, I think it's something that can be part of the offense. And in some games, red letter games, and they're all red letter games, I guess, because you're trying to. It's not like you can just choose. Like I mentioned, Clemson in the past, quarterback when they had Watson. That was his name, right? Great runner, but they didn't expose him to tackles. They didn't have him run the ball in zone read keepers, except against South Carolina and ACC championship game, college football playoff. Other than that, maybe some scrambles here and there, but zone read keep, they didn't want him doing that against North Carolina State. Put him on a pitch count, how many times he's keeping the ball. I could see something like that with Noah Kim, running a little bit here and there, but not a ton of it. But Hauser is coming along pretty well. He's going to be right. He's in there. He's pushing. And Kim keeps getting better. We'll wait and see what we hear about various things this fall. But Hauser's an excellent athlete. Jay Johnson had some interesting quotes about him yesterday, saying he has freakish arm talent. Now, in the past, we had always heard that Noah Kim had the best arm talent on the roster. Maybe Hauser is matching that or exceeding it. Freakish arm talent is not something I've heard a coach ever say about a Michigan State quarterback. And there's been some good ones around here. I mean, Tony Banks, freakish arm talent. Going back a number of years, Jeff Smoker, some of those guys. But Hauser had a lot of talent, is getting it buttoned down a little bit more now, more and more, to the point where I think they're confident that they're going to go into the season feeling that they've got two functional quarterbacks. We still project Kim as the player to beat coming out of spring as number one. The coaches haven't said that, but that's been our take on some things. I'm still projecting him to be the starter, but he needs to continue to play well this August and in a couple scrimmages coming up in order to nail that down. We won't know in the public who the starting quarterback is until they take the field against Central Michigan. I think it's going to be Kim, but Hauser's got a chance. If he lights it up in the scrimmages, he can take that job. It's a competition right now. They're both improving as you would expect. There's good talent there. Peyton Thorne was a good college quarterback, part of a great season 2 years ago. Last year injured. Last year defense was injured, put him in difficult situations. Run game suffered. So it was tough for Peyton Thorne to really have a big impact. A lot of fans became a little bit, what's the word? Like impatient with him. I thought that was wrong. Last year I said all fall that I thought Peyton Thorne was a good, solid winning quarterback and was not the problem. That being said, Kim was applying competitive pressure. That being said, Thorne expected after 2 years of being a starter that he should be named the starter, but that didn't happen. He said it's going to be a competition. That's one of the reasons he was like, let's go see what else is out there. There was competition, and he wasn't guaranteed the job. You can do the math on that. Will Kim outplay him and outperform him this year? It's going to be interesting to see. I'm not sure. You've seen as much of Kim in games as I have, so it's going to be interesting going forward. But running the ball more, I wouldn't say more. It'll be in there. It'll be part of it. But they felt they had really good quarterback depth in 2021 because you had Anthony Russo as a backup. And Thorne barely beat him out. Russo was pretty good. Even with that, you had Kenneth Walker back there, but Thorne ran it a little bit, but not a lot. And Thorne had some solid scrambling ability, some solid athleticism, but when they ran zone read keepers with him, a lot of times in short yardage, sometimes he didn't have a really great feel whether to pull it out, keep it, or hand it off. Some of those short yardage quarterback reads in 2021, great season. He had a great season. Spartan had a great season, but that was not his cup of tea. Third and short zone read. Maybe it'll be better. Maybe Noah Kim will have a little bit better handle on that. So George asks, sounds like they may run much more with mobile athletic quarterbacks. I wouldn't say much more, but it might be in there a little bit. Tim, let's go back here to the comments area. MJ says Tim D in Toronto. Tim D Toronto is 100. So MJ is just saying he likes Toronto. Gotcha. Jason T says, I saw a lot of drop passes on the camp video you posted. You're right, and we're watching it right now, and there were some drop passes. This is the tight end portion of it, and there's a tight end competition. And not all of them are great receivers, but you saw Malik Carr drop one, and Jalen Franklin drop a couple. This is the first day of practice. So this is like the first 30 minutes of practice for the season. So sometimes guys can get a little charged up. That's what I think it is. Malik Carr has good hands. You saw him drop one there. But these were tight ends, and tight end competition is a big part of the competition. It's a big part of what's going on in practice this year. There's like Jay Johnson was talking about it yesterday, saying there's like 8 or 9 tight ends on the roster. And those of you that follow Michigan State closely, you know who they are, and they're all unproven. Even Malik Carr's got to prove himself as a blocker. Evan Morris, former kicker, I think he's the number 2 tight end. Every time I go to practice, he's repping with Carr. Spring scrimmage, he was out there with Carr. Evan Morris, 6'5", 250 or so. Good receiver in high school. Came to Michigan State to kick it off as a walk-on. Moved to tight end. Last year, played special teams. I mean, Michael Masunis is a guy that made a real good catch in the spring scrimmage. He made a couple good catches in practice the other day. Redshirt freshman from Arizona. I keep an eye on him. Jalen Franklin, I think, could be the best blocker that they have. I thought he blocked really well in the scrimmage. A guy they brought in from Wisconsin. Did not play much at Wisconsin. But at Wisconsin, you know that he was really prepped hard in the art of blocking. And this team needs blocking tight ends. I wouldn't be surprised if Jalen Franklin can do that. Does he have any hands? I don't know. But you're right, dropped passes. All right, let's see. We've had a few people stop by, so I'm I'm going to retweet that. Good to have everybody in on a Tuesday night. Good numbers tonight. As we move forward, I've been saying that we might do some of these on an afternoon sometime. You might see a flash SpartanMag live at some point if I just want to do a 3 and out and get something out on a busy day or something. And there won't be as many comments because it might just happen real quickly, and it won't be earlier scheduled. But of course, you can watch it later, as some of you are doing right now. We appreciate those of you that are here. John and Clarkson is here. Sea-Dog says, will we have a legitimate place kicker this year? I do not know. Tucker said on Wednesday that Jonathan Kim, the kicker, the transfer from North Carolina, said the ball came off his foot well. I think that's all we're going to hear. Dan Orner, former Spartan for a little while back in the Saban era, worked with him when he was a second-string Tar Heel, Jonathan Kim. He's a senior. He's been waiting for an opportunity like this. He's got talent. But last year, Ben Patton had talent, Jack Stone had talent, and it was not a good situation at kicker. I've seen talented kickers go out there and struggle. So that is an X factor, and I'll wait to hear what we hear about that position. But I'm sure that if we were at scrimmages, we would see them and they would be they'd be doing well. And then they get in a game and you don't know. But he wouldn't be here if he didn't have talent. You have Rusnak in from Clarkston, and you got another walk-on that's going to be in there competing with them. But I honestly don't have a strong feel on what that's going to look like. I think we've got a call coming in.
Call from
Nils Deco.
To accept, press 1. To send a voicemail, press 2.
All right, let's go to Houston, Texas, on the air live. One of our favorite Michigan State observers, an astute observer. Been watching Michigan State football and basketball for a long time, and we like to have him here. He's an energetic Spartan. I know he's excited for the season to come around. Nils Deco from Houston, Texas, formerly from the Horn AM in Austin, Texas. Now he's just Spartan observer at large, and we like to hear what he says. He always brings a lot of energy, good friend. Nils Deco, how you doing, Nils?
I'm good, except for, the Horn, all the Austin sports radio stations, just so you know, I know my boy Brad Pashenko and Gary Shar and Jim Moore and the rest of the Austin people. There are no sports radio stations in Austin, Texas anymore. So if you, Tim Stout should feel proud the fact that he still has a radio station in Lansing, Michigan. There are no sports radio stations in Austin, Texas anymore.
How can that be? How is that? I know that radio is struggling.
You ever heard of mismanagement?
Yes, I have. Thankfully, nothing that I've been involved with, but people I know and some other companies around town, some severe mismanagement. But really, a city of 1,000 people, great sports town. I know that radio in general has its struggles around the country, but there's no sports channel in Austin. Not even like syndicated ESPN radio, which is going away.
Oh,
also.
They have syndicated stuff, but
okay.
It's a mixed match. I mean, it's amazing how hard it is to make money in radio. In the modern day, unless you're on Sirius or you're
right.
Joe Rogan with your podcast or Howard Stern. I mean, it's a hard deal, and just it's unraveled. I mean, 104.9. The Horn had the Texas contract, and Jason Nasur, who was, a lawyer who had bought the radio station years ago, the Austin Radio Network, decided he didn't want to pay, his landlord. And so, it kind of unraveled. But then Texas decided they're going to go back to iHeart or Learfield. And so Texas, took back their contract in Austin, so they're not the flagship anymore. But it's amazing to me. I mean, it's a hard way to make money right now in terms of the United States is in radio. I mean, it's all about podcasts.
Yeah, podcasts are competitive, that's for sure. And Tim Stout does a great job here locally. And he's got a great situation because he's very successful as a sports director at the NBC affiliate, the local television. So he's got an afternoon show and I'm on it on Thursdays, from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. There's good guests, not including me. His other people are really good guests. But that's his side hustle kind of, right? And he enjoys doing it. And from 11 to 1 p.m. I mean, he's working like any sports director would, but it's not like he's basing his career on those 3 hours. Like you're saying, it's hard to make a living 3 hour in a 3 hour time block in radio these days. And I love radio. I love it. I listen to Stout's show. When I'm driving around, I'll hit Seek and I'll just see what's going on locally. Unfortunately, you don't hear as many, like personalities in terms of DJs and FM around the country.
It's watered down though. I mean, I listen to Channel 84, college sports, on ESPN. I mean, like Neuheisel's the one guy. I'm like, okay, this guy, everyone else should write checks to him. And so, ever since Brock Heward left, I really liked him in the afternoon. Hartsock, Jacob Hester's okay, but I'm like, you're telling me I have to pay to listen to these guys? I mean, I have a friend, Ari Temkin, who's, I don't know if anybody's heard of him, but I think he's on a Big 12 national network. Well, he used to be a producer for me. So that just shows you what the level of radio is. He was a producer for me in Austin, Texas on 1560 back when we were the AM ESPN affiliate. He was I'm like, guys, you understand. If you work for me, that's a problem. So I'm just saying how it's all unraveled. I don't think, the talent is out there. I mean, there's only so many, Howard Stearns. There's only so many, Tim Brandos. I just think it's amazing to me, like the amount of money that's been pulled out of radio.
I will say this, the FM stations, when I drive to Detroit, I'll hit on FM and I'll hit scan, and between songs, some of the personalities is still pretty good there. It's a big city. I love the old DJs though. Those days are gone. I'm just gonna sit here as an old guy and bark at the moon and talk about things that used to be better. It used to be better back in my day. Now I know I would not.
They were better. I'm sorry. Evans Fitzgerald was a better boat than any of these boats they have today. I mean, it's a simple equation. I'm just like, there are a lot of things that were better back then. I mean, I don't know if you watched the movie Poison Rose with John Travolta. I was watching it last night. It was based here in Galveston, right where I live. And they had this like 76 Cadillac convertible. And it was, with the tail fins. I'm like, sorry, but they don't make cars like that anymore. You can say whatever you like. It was better back then. That car was better than any car that we produce today. I'm sorry. I mean, if you look at Cadillacs, that's the one thing. Like, my grandparents had like a 73 or 74 Eldorado, right? It was red, Corinthian leather. I mean, they don't make things better than that. It might have got 8 miles to the gallon, but that was the best driving car. My granddad and I drove it from Cocoa Beach, Florida, up 65 to Indianapolis when I was in 8th grade, so I'm like 85, 86. And I mean, it's like you were sleeping in this car. I mean, it was the best car ever. Like, they don't make cars like that anymore.
Smooth ride.
I'm sorry, I'm 51 years old and complaining, but they don't make Cadillacs. They don't make cars like that anymore.
The Big Ten's not what it used to be either. I haven't talked to you about this whole thing.
Yeah, it's true.
This
Cadillac Eldorado for sure.
I don't want to beat this to death because every college football show in the country's been talking nothing but, expansion and realignment all week, and everybody's sick of it. But I just, Michigan State being a part of the Big Ten used to be special. To be part of the Big Ten was a special thing. Now you bring in Oregon and these other teams, it's not so special anymore. Now there's some programs, I don't want to, Michigan State fans get angry when I give Michigan too much credit, but Michigan and Ohio State, Penn State, I hate to say this, but they're special kind of no matter what, okay? Sorry. They just kind of are. Michigan State has owned Michigan at some points, in college football history. Everybody knows that. Michigan State claims, 6 national championships since 1950. Michigan only has 1, whatever you want. Michigan State's been great in college football history. Maybe sometimes has to work harder to get there. With all, this Big Ten flood coming in with all these other teams, and there's going to be more. Michigan's going to be fine. Penn State's going to be fine. Ohio State's going to be fine. Michigan State, I worry about the flood that they're going to get caught in there, and it's going to hurt the brand a little bit because it was more of a shining island when there were fewer Big Ten teams. Now that there's more, basically as you add more and more teams, Nils, there's no longer going to be a Big Ten. It's not. They'll probably still call it the Big Ten, but they might as well call it the AFC or whatever. If you have 20, 24 teams in the future, then you're just one of, I don't want to say many, but you're not a member of the Big Ten as it was. And I think that the Big Ten might have been at its strongest, there at the end of the D'Antonio era, when that money was coming in for all the Big Ten schools, and there were still only 14 members or whatever it was, that might have been at its strongest. By the way, back in the 70s and 80s, those of you that might remember the 70s and 80s, the Big Ten stunk back then. It stunk. Teams would, Ohio State or Michigan would win the Big Ten, go to the Rose Bowl, get thumped every year. They get thumped by Washington, get thumped by UCLA every year. Look at Bo Schembechler's bowl record. The Big Ten was not good. Back then.
Well, it hadn't evolved, though. I mean, Warren Moon, I think, was the quarterback in '76 in Washington when they won the Rose Bowl. I think against Ohio State, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, he couldn't even get a sniff in the NFL. He goes up to Canada, wins 6 Grey Cups, and he comes back down here to Houston and, ends up in the Hall of Fame. I mean, but, they were so far ahead of us. And, we don't
the West Coast was
credit.
good. USC was really good. Warren Moon beat Michigan, by the way. The SEC.
Darryl Rogers leaving Michigan State in 1978 or 79, if he could have stuck around, would have changed the whole thing. He would have been – so Mike White comes from, the West Coast in 82 to goes to Illinois and has all those quarterbacks. Dave Wilson, Jack Trudeau, what was his name? Tony, played for the Patriots.
Tony Eason.
Yeah. And Darryl Rogers with Eddie Smith.
Yes.
I mean, not Eddie Smith. With Eddie Smith and Brian Clark and Johnny Leister. I mean, he was ahead of the curve.
Yes.
He was ahead of Illinois by 4 years.
Yes.
If he could have stuck around, Michigan State could have done the same things Illinois did and probably been in the Rose Bowl in 81 or 82.
They freaked people out. They were good. They were the best team in the Big Ten in 78. Michigan State wasn't. Over at the Underground Bunker message board, somebody posted the Michigan State-Michigan game, the cut-ups from that game, a couple of months ago. It wasn't every single snap, but it was most of them. I had never seen that game before, Nils. I'd seen highlights. Michigan was very good back then. Everybody knows it, but they were not prepared defensively to deal with the West Coast offense, and that's essentially what Darryl Rogers had at that point. They had a good run game and could drop back and just hit those dig routes over the middle. Gibson had one pass. They went deep and complete to him early, but just throwing to everybody, and the defense. It looked like Michigan State last year trying to stop Minnesota. Just back there in a 2-deep shell, what are we supposed to do? Now, Michigan State had special circumstances for that game. Coming back from Washington, that was not ideal, and had a bunch of injuries. They played better defense later in the year, but that particular day they were not good. But Michigan State was excellent that day against Michigan in 78. And you're right, Darryl Rogers was excellent. But the Big Ten was terrible back then. Now, locally, there's a lot of hype every year that Michigan was great and Ohio State was great, and, the Michigan-Ohio State rivalry and all that. And whoever won that game would go out to the Rose Bowl and get thumped. And, the hype machine would say, well, Michigan and Ohio State are running attacks, and it takes longer for a running team to get into their rhythm, whereas the West Coast teams throw it, and they just have to throw a couple passes, and there's all kinds of excuses, everything except the field being crowned. But the Big Ten was bad. Back then, the powers were Notre Dame. Bear Bryant had good teams in 78, 79, Major Ogilvy and Wishbone, all that stuff. But SEC was not great. But, Southwest was good with Texas and Earl Campbell, Southwest Conference. Big 8 had Oklahoma, Wishbone, Barry Switzer, Nebraska. They were powerful. Penn State, Pittsburgh, USC. Hey, the Big Ten teams, were like, sometimes they'd be ranked high, but they were not among the top 8 teams in the country. Ever. From about, 1974, 75 till 90. Michigan State won the Big Ten in 87, and I think spent 1 week in the top 10 that year. Good team, tough team, physical team, respectable team. Love that team, but the Big Ten was not good. And when Perlis went out there and won that Rose Bowl, that was part of the battle cry. Perlis said, we want to win it for the Big Ten. We don't want to go out there and lose like all the other Big Ten teams. Big Ten was not good. Now, in the last 15, 20 years, Big Ten's been pretty good. Now you go into this season with Michigan preseason number 2, Ohio State number 4. Now, that's preseason. They've not done it yet. But, Nils, if you're our age, that hasn't happened very often. And Penn State's right there at number 6 or 7 or 8 or whatever they are. The Big Ten.
Here's my thing, though. Ohio State and Penn State aren't returning quarterbacks. So, we're banking on a lot. Ohio State's had the best quarterback in the country for probably the last 5, 6, 7 years.
Yeah.
Who's the quarterback from – he's from Medina, Ohio at Penn State. This guy that's supposed to commit to Michigan State.
Heller.
And the guy before him was there 6, 7 years. So, and the number 1 draft pick in the whole NFL draft was at Ohio State last year. So all of a sudden they're 4 and 6. I see Ohio State and Penn State taking a major step back. Yes,
Really?
they have all the receivers, they have all the talent, but they don't have J.J. McCarthy. I mean, I think it's Michigan and everyone else falls in line. And I think Ryan Day, every day he's there, what's our rule of thumb? Every day that Urban Meyer goes away, Ohio State gets worse, right?
That was a theory. Right? That's a theory that I put out there when Meyer left. And, you know, you have to wonder. People in Ohio are wondering. I mean, his record is great. His record's great.
Last 730 days, I mean, he's lost. I mean, when it comes to a fight, I mean, I think Ohio State, they don't have Garrett Wilson. They don't have the Jigba. They don't have, I mean, like, they had the best receiving core in the history of college football over the last 3 or 4 years. And now they have Marvin Harrison Jr., who's as good as receivers in college football. But, I mean, do you trust that quarterback? I mean, they were relying on a guy who's the number one draft pick who just got announced to be the number one, be the starter of the NFL for the Texans today. I'm like, they don't have that guy behind there. So same thing at Penn State. I just think, you know, Michigan State, we had Peyton Thorne. He was good 2 years ago, wasn't good last year. I think you have to realize what you have at quarterback. And I don't think Ohio State and Penn State have the same level that they had in the past.
I suspect that their quarterback's going to be fine. McCord, I think it's going to be like the old Miami Hurricanes when they lose a quarterback and you're like, oh, who's the next guy? You know, the next guy comes in and it's Gino Torretta. I just have a feeling.
Think that? I mean, Gino Torretta was,
he had trouble at
Gino
Spartan
Torretta
Stadium.
just had more talent than anybody else. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if the toughness is Ohio State.
Toughness.
I don't think it's.
Good question, and that's what, you know, they really tried to stack up toughness last year, and Michigan beat them with some deep shots here and there. Michigan also is a much better cold weather team than Ohio State is, and
they have 3 tight ends. They don't have 3 tight ends in the world right now.
That game's played in cold weather, not this year, but the first year that Harbaugh beat them. It was cold that day, and Stroud and those Sun Belt receivers did not look comfortable in that game. I mean, Michigan deserved it; they were excellent, but. I don't know, play that game in a dome, and I think Ohio State wins, but that's some of the beauty of Midwestern football. You got, you know, I mean, that game's been the red letter game in the conference for years.
Let's go back to Ohio State's losses, right, in critical situations. So back when Tyler O'Connor and Damon Terry, and Geiger, Michigan State was playing with their 4th and 5th string quarterback, and they beat Ohio State at Ohio State. Ohio State doesn't like the cold.
They do
exactly
not.
what you're saying.
You're right. Did you see Ohio State?
Play them in November.
Did you see Ohio State against Northwestern last year?
Yeah, they hated that too. They don't like the cold.
It was terrible weather at Northwestern. They eked out like a 21-7 win. They are not a good cold weather team. They've got a lot of great athletes, a lot of them from the Sun Belt, but the way that calendar shakes out, not ideal for Ohio State to play that as a cold weather game. So, but that's the way it is.
Back to your idea of Delaney telling the college football playoffs, like, hey, here's what we're going to do. So we're going to play games in Chicago, Green Bay, for the semifinals. So Alabama can play Ohio State in Green Bay or Chicago in December and see how that works out for them. And it would be the whole thing would flip.
A lot of people want to see that. And the best teams are probably still going to win the national championships because the best teams will not have to go on the road. But, your second or third SEC team that occasionally has to come north over the course of time, they're not going to win as many of those games as they would if it were a neutral site, and not as many as if they're playing January 1st in 80-degree temperatures at Orlando like they have over the years. But
there's a reason the Vikings and Lions haven't been to the Super Bowl, and the Bears and Packers have.
Well, NFL's a little different.
2 teams are outside.
Maybe NFL's a little different, because you've got a mixture. It's not as regional.
If you're playing in January, there's a reason the Lions haven't won since '58, right?
Well, there's a few reasons. But I'll say this about the weather situation. When you've seen bowl games in odd circumstances when a Florida team has had to play in cold weather, the Miami Hurricanes, they had like 3 bowl games that were unseasonably cold. They played Notre Dame in the Sun Bowl, and it snowed that day, and Notre Dame beat them like 31-0. Miami played Wisconsin in the Gator Bowl. That's Jacksonville. That's up the peninsula. And it was like 49, 51 degrees, which is frigid for the Miami players. The Miami players were all stacked around the heater, just freezing, and Wisconsin just steamrolled them that day. I think the same thing, similar would happen. I'm not saying those Wisconsin, those Minnesota, I'm not saying those Miami teams were great, and that's not the way all the Southern teams would react in those situations, but there would be dozens and dozens of them that have never played in cold weather, and collectively it would make them a C-minus version of themselves. And if they were playing at Camp Randall Stadium on December 25th in the first round of the playoff or the quarterfinals, that would be some interesting carnage to watch.
What year did Michigan State play USC in the Sun Bowl? 89 or 90?
90. 89 was the Aloha Bowl. 90 was
remember 90?
90 was the year Michigan State.
Day, right?
Michigan State shared the Big Ten with 3 teams, a 4-way tie for first place that year. It was kind of cold in El Paso.
It was a cold day in El Paso. Remember, it was a cold day in El Paso that year, right? And Carlos Jenkins, Dixon Edwards, Cliff Confer, Bobby Wilson, Bill Johnson. Michigan State thumped on Marinovich and those guys. USC wanted no part of that. And that goes back to the cold part, right? El Paso can be cold because it's elevated, right? It's about 5,500 feet.
Yes.
They wanted no part of that, and Michigan State just pounded on them. It was so much fun. And like Marinovich, they ran scared USC. And so it goes back to our idea that if the game gets to 48 degrees, the Midwest can kind of counter the speed and athletic ability of the South or the West, and maybe we get, on the same playing field as, the NFL. And like Tom Brady, the only reason he won 6 or 7 Super Bowls is most of his games went through New England, right?
Sure. So now Greg Sankey, the SEC commissioner, is saying that he wants that they should revisit the 12-game playoff. I wonder what he has in mind. He's saying now with the conference realignment, he said that the 12-team structure was in place to make it more open to West Coast teams. And now that those West Coast teams are going to the Big Ten, he says it needs to be revisited. I wonder what he's really thinking. I've not heard a lot of dialogue about that. Does he want to take it down to 8? I think they should take it to 8. I don't think 12 is a good idea. I just said a moment ago why I would like to see some of it in some aspects of it, but in other aspects of it, when you have, you're going to have your 4 top seeds are going to get a bye, and then they're going to play the number 8 team in the country. In recent years, the difference between number 1 and number 8 has been gargantuan. You saw Georgia against TCU this year. You saw Georgia against Michigan last year. We've seen Michigan State against Alabama a couple times. It's a huge gap. We saw Alabama against Notre Dame in a national championship game, no contest. Well, we saw Alabama against LSU, no contest for a national championship, 8 weeks after they had already played once and lost. But when they play again, LSU barely crossed the 50-yard line. These college football games, sometimes they're like MMA fights. When someone gets an edge on somebody, it's blowout city and it's ugly. Well, now, you're telling me that you think about Georgia the last couple of years, and you're going to play them in a quarterfinal against, could play, whoever's number 7 against number 11. The winner of that game is playing at Georgia. Georgia's had a week off. Number 7 squeaks by number 11. They're beaten up. They're coming 7 days later to play in Athens, is what they're saying. I think that's the way it's going to be. Is that the way it's going to be? Are they going to be at home or the first? I don't even know. But you're going to have more.
Athens could be cold, though. The thing is, Athens could be cold.
I'm just saying, but it's going to be the home games. You're just going to get more blowouts. You don't need a 12-team playoff. You don't need. You don't need to put these players through that. You don't need this many blowouts to determine who the national champion is. The only reason they're doing it is because it provides 11 games, more inventory, and more money. 4 games, if you want to expand it to 8, do they really need it? I don't know. They all were marching.
Why don't you cut your scholarships down to 65 like the NFL?
Oh, gosh.
That's the next step. That's what they're going to do. That's what
they do that. Hey, they're going to be deciding championship games with walk-ons pretty soon. Remember when Stoops said that at Oklahoma when this team, they barely lost to Georgia in the semifinals out in the Rose Bowl, played really well. And he said, we were running out of players. If they would have won the next week, they wouldn't have had much. You saw it last year in the NFL, one of the conference championship games, one of those teams didn't have a quarterback. Who was it? Was it Carolina or something? I don't know who it was.
The Niners, Brock Purdy.
Niners didn't have anybody. So you're going to see that in the 85 scholarship era, these bangers, these tough games. And now that, with the Big Ten having 20 teams pretty soon, probably, are they going to have a Big Ten championship, or are they going to have a Big Ten semifinal, then a championship? And even more games and more. The thing about the NFL, yeah, they're great athletes and they run and they hit, but you know what? They don't load up and they don't hit 100% all year, Nils, right? They do in the playoffs, but they don't hit as hard as they can all year. They play hard, they play to win. I've got great respect for them, but they don't They don't have to play that hard. They're out there to keep their jobs and everything. But these college kids, they are the best coaches are the ones that really get the players to sacrifice their bodies. And you can only sacrifice your body so many times. Not that I would know. I've just been watching it for a long time. So asking these guys to play 12 regular season, then a 13th game, then a 14th game, then a 15th, 16th game, and the stakes getting higher and higher, and the collisions getting harder and harder. Hey, the TV networks will be liking it, but it's not great. I don't want to be the old guy here complaining about everything, Nils. So let's rewind and talk about Michigan State football before I let you go. You fired up about the season coming up? Well, I know you've been reading a lot of the preseason stuff we have over at SpartanMag.com. What's caught your ear? What's caught your eye? What are you thinking about when you talk about Michigan State football right now? When you think about the Michigan State Spartans and the great sport, the manly art of tackle football, and the Spartans, what comes to mind? What are you thinking about right now?
I think we finally have some depth. I think we have some depth on the offensive line, and we have some depth on the defensive line. I think when it's all said and done, that's the most important thing in college football or any kind of football, is you have depth. And I think we've kind of stuck some depth over time. I think Kavilovich has done a good job of, getting his offensive line. I mean, you talk about Michigan State 2 years ago. I mean, last spring, not this previous spring, but where they have 6 guys in scholarship that could, participate in spring practice. I think last year they had 24, 25.
Yeah.
I mean, that's number one. And I think this defensive line, if you look at, the kid that got from, down here in Houston, the kid at A&M, I like him. I like Bogle being, healthy. I like Simeon Barrow. I think he's our best defensive player potentially out of Georgia. Mm-hmm. And I like, Derek, or the Harmon kid, out of Loyola, out of Detroit. Yeah. I think Michigan State's front seven is probably kind of sneaky good.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's fantastic, but if you look at the pieces, they're pretty good. Now, Charles Brantley, I haven't heard his name all fall. Is he alive?
Yeah.
Where's his name?
He was out there. He showed up in the video. He's out there.
So, he's going to strike somebody.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if he can take the next step. I mean, we put him out there, and he was 162 pounds, and he's broken his shoulder 2 or 3 years, and he's probably the toughest kid, and he's got, he's a warrior, right, out of Venice, Florida. He's Herb Haygood's cousin. And then we got to figure out who the other corner is. But I think the front seven is going to be sneaky good with Halliday and Windman and Brule. I mean, I think the front seven is better than what we're giving it credit for, and I think a lot of the prognosticators are the same way. I think if someone beats out Brandon Baldwin at left tackle, be it Blackstock or Boyd, that's a good thing, right? I think Duplain and Samak are going to be good inside. I don't know about Spencer Brown over there on the right tackle, but I think Michigan State, Malik Carr is a difference maker. There's some weird things. I think Michigan State, could sneak out an 8-4 year. I mean, it's not easy playing Washington, who has probably one of the top 4 quarterbacks in the country, and one of the best coaches in the country. And then you got to play Penn State, Michigan, Ohio State. So I mean, those are the 4 games. You're like, okay, automatically, you're probably at 80-20, lose-win proposition, and then you got to figure out, can you beat Maryland? Can you beat Minnesota? Can you beat Nebraska? Can you beat Iowa, right?
Right.
So Iowa, that X factor, because, Kurt France has been there for 75 years, and they got McNamara, they got the big tight end that transferred from Michigan, and they're always going to have a Phil Parker defense. I mean, they're always going to have that defense. You got to figure out how to get through that. So it's going to be a 21-17 or 2017 game. I can't imagine McNamara, they're never going to open it up at Iowa. They can't do that. But if Michigan State's 8-4, that's a heck of a year.
Oh, that'd be a great season. And it would be a great jumping off point to the next year, too, because a lot of these guys will be coming back. But that defensive front makes you hard to run against, theoretically. Get it all stable together, get everybody on the same page, get everybody square. You should be physical up front with depth. And if you have that, you've got a chance to get a level of consistency if your offense is pretty good. And if you have that, you will jump up and give somebody a tough day that's not expecting it at some point. If you've got a good, solid
kicking game, the kicking game has to show up this year.
No idea what that's going to be.
Bryce Baringer was the best punter in the whole wide world last year, and then the kicking game
and the long snapper. I mean, last year with Behringer, when the long snapper went haywire, I mean that really eliminated Behringer as a weapon and an asset in the game against Michigan, because the Michigan game was turning into a little bit of a punt fest. And Behringer didn't have that great.
17-14, exactly.
And Behringer did not have a very good game because the long snapper was all over the place. And then in the end, he put a couple over his head. His snaps were they were slow, and it messed Behringer up. And I don't know this for a fact, but I suspect on the sideline they were telling him, you got to snap it harder than that. So he tried it and snapped it over his head a couple times, and that turned a 2-score game into a 3-score game. But which leads to other questions as to, how do you get that deep into the season and you're still trying to coach your long snapper? The next week against Illinois, the long snapper was better. How does a long snapper get better in 7 days? Why wasn't the second string long snapper getting better in August? That's quality control, right, Nils?
I mean, it's hard, though, when you're not giving a kid any money. I mean, if a kid's not getting any money, he's volunteering himself to go out there and spend 20 hours a week and not get his education paid for. I mean, that's the hardest thing. It's not like you're going to carry 3 long snappers, you're right? I mean, a long snapper gets cut, or in the NFL, Pepper gets hurt. You got a new guy coming in there that's been doing it for 15 to 17 years, and it's proficient. I mean, there's no error. I mean, there's a guy, Justin Snow, who went to Baylor, who was the Colts. My nephew got coached by him. And he was in the NFL for 14 or 15 years. I mean, it's just, everyone forgets it's a position,
But right or wrong, the long snapper last year was better against Illinois than he was against Michigan. I mean, maybe just a couple snaps. Maybe he was better in practice. Maybe it was the moment. I don't know. But he got better. I mean,
when did Pepper get hurt? No one knows when Pepper got hurt. That's the whole problem.
Well, it's kind of an illness type of situation, and there's some medical things that you can't really disclose. You can't really ask.
That's a situation you bring a guy from Australia that no one knows about, and you put him on the roster. I mean, like, anybody would know, like, oh yeah, we brought this guy. He was part of the Australian kicking company. Oh yeah, okay, he's our snapper. I mean, like, would anybody know that?
Dude, I don't
know. No
know.
one's going to know you brought a guy from Australia to be your snapper. I mean, you probably could pull it off. He's a walk-on, right?
You think there's snappers in Australia?
I'm assuming
No.
it's the best. I mean,
No, there's punters, but not snappers.
Okay, I bet there are. I'm putting money on it.
There's more in Texas. So what else about MSU football before I let you go? You optimistic? If to get 8-4, we'll be talking about the records for the rest of the summer, but I think that there's 4 games that'll decide whether you go 8-4 or not. Maryland, Minnesota, Nebraska, and who's the other one? Iowa. You win those 4, you go 8-4. You might upset one of the big ones, but then you might drop one somewhere else. I'm not sure. But if you go 2-2 in those 4, then you're 6-6. And you might be a halfway pretty good solid team and go 6-6 with this schedule if Penn State and Washington are as good as they're supposed to be. And I suspect Washington on
I don't
offense.
think Penn State's going to be as good. I don't trust James Franklin. I'm telling you right now. Where do we play them? We play them at home or we play them out there?
Ford Field, man. Come on.
Okay, I forgot about that part.
Yeah. By the way, Franklin, that's okay. By the way, Franklin at Big Ten Media Days, when he was asked about that, he said, we're going to pack this place. We're going to show up at this place. Like, he thought that he was at Ford Field. I wanted to raise my hand and say, dude, you're in Indianapolis. This is not Detroit. You're going to be playing in Detroit. That's 400 miles from here, 4 hours from here. But I appreciate that he was ready to play. Wrong building, but I don't know. But the Ford Field thing I'm sure Penn State's happy that game's in Ford Field. They'd rather play there than Spartan Stadium.
I think it's a great idea.
Well,
no one wants to. No, it's a great idea.
But
other than you liking snow angels, I think it's a great idea.
I understand it. I'm just saying it's going to be harder for Michigan State to win at Ford Field than it would have been at Spartan Stadium. I'm saying Penn State would rather play at Ford Field. You play indoors.
Yeah,
it's going to favor.
Environment.
It favors the team with the more athleticism, which is Penn State. And it could be a loud environment for Michigan State there. It could be good. I don't know. Maybe I'll be wrong. I'm just thinking that it'll be. It would have been harder for Penn State to win at Spartan Stadium, but I understand why Michigan State did it.
Who's going to show up that game? Who's going to show up that game?
Who?
The guy that caught the touchdown pass in the 1980 Ford Cherry Bowl.
Wazinski?
Yeah, Bob Wazinski. And your dad, when your dad's best friends with Bob Wazinski's dad?
Yeah.
See, that's what's going to happen. Bob Wazinski's going to catch a touchdown pass.
That'll be good. The only touchdown against Nate.
I love Bob Wazinski. I mean, how many white receivers are named Bob Wazinski anymore? 0.
Well, I would imagine most.
Bob Wazinski was a good receiver. He was on that team with my man Butch Roll, Vino Belt, and Lorenzo White.
Lorenzo gained like 90 yards against the Army that day, right?
He did. He was good against Army.
He's a true freshman. Nate Sassaman was the quarterback for Army. That was a good Army team. And Nate Sassaman, I remember.
6, right?
Yeah.
We lost the game 10-6.
Beautiful, beautiful football. Packed at the Silverdome. Packed.
The Cherry Bowls. Ken Hoffman bringing you the Cherry Bowls.
Was that 1984? That was Michigan State's first bowl game since '65, was it not?
I think so.
Think about that. All right, Nils, we appreciate your passion,
Appreciate
your energy. Appreciate everything you bring to the table. We'll talk to you later. Thanks for joining the show. Appreciate it. All right, let's go over here to the comments area. We're a little bit behind. We didn't expect to go open lines, but we just kind of opened them up there a little bit. Let's see. Let's go back to a couple here. We'll do a couple of the comments over here. Anyway, if you're new to this or just joining us, my name is Jim Comparoni, publisher of SpartanMag.com, and we'd love to have you subscribe to the channel. Give us a subscription here. Give us a like, and go over to SpartanMag.com and become a subscriber over there and get all our preseason camp coverage and our game coverage, recruiting coverage. If you're liking this and you're into Michigan State football, you would love that. SpartanMag.com. Go check it out. Daniel Barry Sports Highlight says, yo. Stu Redmond says, okay, where's Old Tuck? Jim McKay says, good to see you back, Comp, and good to hear you. Yes, we had a few weeks off, but we're back at it. James Bannon says, several of the transfers are not on scholarship, but given NIL equal to a scholarship. This is how they can get Michigan-based transfers in with scholarships. That's right, James. I didn't want to say that factually because I don't know that for sure, but in terms of recruited players on the roster, Michigan State has more than 85. So the depth is pretty good. And, not all those guys are great, but there'll be some players that come out of that heap. But that includes, James Alexander transferring in as a linebacker from Massachusetts. It might include Mangum, the running back. I don't know. We don't know all of that. But you're right. So the numbers are up, and we'll see how that shakes out. J.J. McKay says, greetings from Keweenaw County. Keweenaw up, you know where that is. Sonny Elliott would take that off there and squeak it. Those of you in the Keweenaw don't know that, but Detroit area people from the 70s, you know what I'm talking about. James Bannon says Stone has made 8 trips to Michigan State and 7 on his own dime. That's true, but I'm still not sure. Nick Cox says over under 4.5. That's what Vegas says. I would say over on that. Good to see Spartan MD. Jason G says Walmart Wolverine trolls are obsessed with Michigan State. At least we have that one thing in common. Walmarters were all obsessed with MSU. I don't know what to make of that. Sea-Dog says NIL is playing a big part in recruiting now. Lots of big money being thrown around out there. Paul Villamonte says, Manistee here, let's do this. Do it this year, State. Manistee. Beautiful place. Manistee is on Lake Michigan. The UP, beautiful there along Highway 2, Escanaba. Other places. Speaking of which, for a long time we've had our Great Lakes power pole, and Lake Huron has been number one for I think 211 weeks. I think it is 211 weeks. Lake Huron's been number one, and it's strong. I mean, Lake Huron is strong. Lake Huron is a wonderful place. This is from Mackinac Island right there. I took that picture. I took this one too. Lake Huron, number one in the power rankings for the Great Lakes. I kind of like, my guy from Manistee and the other one from the Keweenaw. Keweenaw, he's a Lake Superior guy, and I took this picture too. Lake Superior, beautiful. Look at those rocks. Got your sandstone. Lake Superior is huge, deep sea water, as Longfellow said. Deep sea waters. Might have been Hemingway. And that right there we are right at the mouth of the Big Hearted River, where the Big Hearted River goes into Lake Superior. Beautiful. A little bit warm in that water too, by the way. It's usually cold. It was kind of warm. There are people snorkeling around there. Those rocks are beautiful. Big water. Lake Superior. All these lakes are different. They're all different. Huron and Michigan are similar. Michigan has those dunes. Michigan's been number one. Lake Huron's been number one 211 weeks. And they've had a really good run. When you talk about Lake Michigan, I took this picture too. Check this one out. Sleeping Bear Dunes, ladies and gentlemen. Been up there, took a look at all three of those lakes. All four of them, actually, if you want to, over here, I took this one to Point Pelee, Canada. Underrated lake is Lake Erie. Best walleye fishing, arguably, in the world. And I'm partial toward Lake Erie because of these jokers right here. I got some kids and nieces and nephews and neighbors and that type of thing. But I got to say, we took a look at it, and Lake Huron here's the bluff here, over there by Arch Rock, if you've been over there. But it's been 211 weeks, and took a good look at all of them. I'm here to announce we got a change up in number one in the power rankings, the Great Lakes power rankings. After 211 weeks, Lake Huron drops. Nothing they did wrong. Just Lake Michigan is just a little too strong right now. And I know Lake Michigan has been the big favorite, the betting favorite, the leader in all the polls over at SpartanMag. And I understand that. It is beautiful with the bluffs and the dunes and all that. Chicago's great. Green Bay with, Ludington, Muskegon, Holland, Grand Haven, Milwaukee. Lake Michigan's great. It's beautiful. Everybody knows that. I've always been a little partial to the people part of it over there in the Lake Huron side. In the Canadian part of Lake Huron, nothing to sneeze at either. But Lake Michigan moves ahead, and Lake Superior gaining on number 2 as well. Those are my rankings. I'm a little bit biased against Lake Ontario. Nothing against those fine people. I love the city of Toronto. It's all good fun up there. But I'm just a little bit biased. It's Michigan bias on that one. I apologize about that. But Lake Michigan, number 1, the new number 1 in the Great Lakes Power Rankings for the first time in 211 weeks. Lake Michigan back on top. So congratulations to Lake Michigan on that one. Let's go back here to the comments. Michigan State versus Rutgers game will be pretty fun this year, says Lee Taylor. Jason G says Michigan State will dominate Rutgers. U of M will probably have a hard time with them, though. Spartan MD says, JC, will we see improvement in the pass defense? Dylan Tatum at nickel. Dylan Tatum, I think, is physically built to be a nickel. He's playing corner now. He's competing for a starting job there. He started the last game of the year in Penn State, played pretty well, began the season as a safety. He's built like a safety, but he's got good feet, good speed, able to kind of handle the corner position, but long term, I think he moves inside to nickel or safety. But right now he's out there because he's got all kinds of ability. And I was talking to Mooby about this a couple days ago. Reminds me a little bit, he's not built like these guys, but it reminds me a little bit of Lamar Marshall. Remember Lamar Marshall, like Saban's first year? He ended up starting at corner. And then he went to safety and he became a linebacker in the NFL. But he played corner as a young player because he could play it better than anybody else at that point. Demetrius Martin was around his mother's and Martin got shuffled out a little bit. But Lamar Marshall was playing corner because he could handle it. Reminds me of that with Tatum a little bit. He played corner last year because he could handle it. Now, there were some injuries also, but he could handle it, even though he might be more natural for another position. Eric Morris was that way. Eric Morris, coming out of Berkeley, was a real good running back, ended up being an NFL safety. But as a freshman, played a little bit of running back and was a second-string corner and got a little bit of playing time at corner. But he was at corner there with Marshall because they needed somebody to do it. He's an athlete. Morris was probably built a little bit more like Tatum. Eventually, Morris became an NFL safety. But early in his career, played safety, played corner because they needed him there. I think Tatum could be similar. And he showed more physicality last year than I knew that he had. Credit to him. Because in high school, he was a running back, skill position guy. Played corner, played DB in high school because he thought long-term he wanted to be a DB. Good choice, but wasn't really a contact guy. When I watched his film, I was like, it wasn't really coming naturally to him. So I said he had a lot to learn in terms of football. I thought that he was a 4-star athletic talent, but as a player was kind of a 3-star project. Well, he made more progress last year than I thought. And looked pretty good against Penn State. I don't know if he starts now at corner. You got Brantley there. You got Caleb Coley around. You got Marquis Lowry. You got Terry Roberts coming in from Iowa. This is the depth they're talking about. When they talk about the depth, I mean, they've got candidates. I'm not saying any of those guys are great, but there's candidates. So Tatum, maybe they've got the luxury to move him into the slot area. But at the slot area against some teams, you'll have Brule there. against Iowa, maybe Michigan, and some of the power running two-back teams or teams that are more run-oriented. You can put Brule at the nickel and play a 4-3. Angelo Gross, made some mistakes last year. He's always made some mistakes. Maybe he can get a better handle on things. He's physically capable of being a hybrid type of guy in there in the slot. Kimbrough's tried it. Didn't work out well last year. Got shuffled back to third string. Does Tatum overtake Kimbrough? I would think so. Nothing against Kimbrough, but I would kind of hope so. I kind of hope that the bigger, stronger, younger guy would overtake there. So, good questions about Tatum. MSU Hunter Spartan says, checking in from Wisconsin. He's probably a Lake Michigan guy. Kenneth says, hello from downriver. JJ McKay from the Keweenaw says, there's only one way the Pass D can go this year, and that's improve, and you are right. Sea-Dog says, I feel a 2017 type season coming up. Fairly low expectations going into the season, then end up 10-3. How about that? That'd be something. 10-3 is the big flip, going from 3-9 to 9-3. Dwayne Baldwin says, time to get back to business. Ray Leahy says, thought I saw something about Matt Hasselbeck's kid at MSU plays quarterback. Didn't see his name, though. You're right. Hasselbeck is committed to Michigan State. He's still in high school. He'll be a senior in high school in Massachusetts this year. I think he's underrated. He's kind of a 3-star type of guy. Big-time lacrosse player. He was committed to Maryland in lacrosse. And when you watch his film, you know how lacrosse players with dodging and all that, the dodging thing that he has in lacrosse, he brings that to the pocket, getting loose and running around. Hasselbeck's an interesting one, I think underrated. Streetwise says, hello from Shanghai. And he says, ha ha. I assume he's telling the truth there from Shanghai. Got Shanghai and Hong Kong represented today. Appreciate that. And once again, if you're just joining us, Lake Michigan is, after 211 weeks, is the number 2 in the SpartanMag.com, SpartanMag Live. Great Lakes Power Rankings is the new number 1. So congratulations to Lake Michigan on that one. Jason G says, Comp, whatever you keep hitting to repeat the audio, you have to just tear that button off or uninstall whatever it is. Was I hitting something? Whatever you keep hitting to repeat the audio. I'm not sure what's going on there. I'm interested in what you're saying, though. Because we want to have good audio. Christopher Josephs is watching from Windsor, Ontario. I was in Windsor a couple days ago. Coming through. Love Windsor. Donald Pearson says, what's up, JC? Go green. JJ McKay from the Keweenaw says he is probably unmuting the audio on YouTube window. I think this is a while ago, not sure. Rob South says, what's up, fellas? Rob South is late. He's tardy. JJ McKay from the Keweenaw says, what's up, Rob? Jason G says, tight end, Harlan Barnett, and running back coaches have to show us something this year, even if it's gradual. I think that's true. Harlan Barnett's been an excellent coach over the years, coaching the safeties now. He's got a couple of young ones, Mangum and Spencer. I think they're going to be pretty good. The depth behind them, a little bit of a question mark. You've got Armorian Smith coming in as a transfer from Cincinnati. Malcolm Jones around there is in the slot area. Quavion Carter is a linebacker. Seeing him in practice last week for the first time. I mean, he was probably around last summer, but I didn't notice. Then he was hurt and missed some time. But listed as a DB in the recruiting rankings, but recruited by Michigan State as a linebacker. But Barnett, he's done it before. He's got some new safeties there. I suspect they're going to be okay. Salgado coming in to coach the corners. It's going to be good there, I think. Tucker says coaching upgrade there. And Tucker, to his credit, in so many words, when he coached the corners last year, didn't get the improvement there that they were expecting and anticipating. And, Tucker going outside the box there a little bit on that one to bring in Brandon Jordan to be a pass rush coach, something new. Jordan was never really going to recruit all that much. The thing that was going to be recruitable in terms of him as a coach was his ability to be a specialist coach and to help pass rushers and NFL players. They felt they could recruit to that, but he wasn't going to recruit very much. And they tried it. It was a move that was outside the box. When you hear the term think outside the box, sometimes being outside the box doesn't work that great. They tried it for a year. Didn't work that great. Now they're back to something a little more conventional. And I think Salgado is going to do well with the corners. So young secondary guys, and I think there's going to be progress there. BTC Chris Foulin says, any updates on emerging guys in the secondary and of the receiver position? Caleb Coley's a guy that didn't play because he might have played one game last year. But I was hearing good things about him beneath the surface. Made a good play the other day in practice. We saw that on social media that Michigan State released. Young guy, corner's got some ability, so keep an eye on Caleb Coley at corner. Receivers, Christian Fitzpatrick, I heard good things about him in the spring. Big receiver, not the fastest guy in the world, but fast enough with his size. I heard he was coming along real well. You hear good things about Jerron Glover. He played early in that Akron game last year, then didn't play again. Same with Terrell Henry in terms of the wide receiver position. I got to say, Glover's high school film I didn't think looked that great coming out of Sarasota, but last year got on the field there, and you hear players talk about him and coaches with some compliments. But I also hear that about Fitzpatrick. Do you count Montori Foster? Montori Foster's a guy that played as a true freshman, and then that was in 2020. Then he got hurt in 2021, got hurt last year. He's got some ability, downfield ability. I'm not sure. We've not seen him play after play. He might end up being – he's the type of guy that needs to have a really good year to be a plus player, to be a pleasant surprise. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but if Michigan State's going to make a run at like an 8-4 season and really outproduce what everybody's expecting, someone like Montori Foster has to be like, holy crap, that guy's good. It's possible. I don't know that for sure. We'll have to see. I mean, it's a guy that focused on basketball for a long time, was kind of a late bloomer. Michigan State got in on him late, coming out of Glenville, and they were excited about him. Had a great senior season. Hadn't played high school football in a year or two prior to that. And then came in and played right away as a true freshman. Like I said, injuries in the meantime, but that's the type of guy that can make a difference for you, and they needed at that position. But emerging guys at receiver, I've not heard anything about the two incoming guys, Jalen Smith and Isaiah Johnson, yet. It's early. It's week 1, but I think they've got a lot of talent. But Fitzpatrick might be the answer there. A guy that only has, one career reception. Might be a big body target guy that can give them something. I've been hearing good things about him. Ryan Lemian asks if he can call and talk some football. Not right now. I got to get through some things. We'll open up the phone lines coming up soon, but probably not tonight. Illness Eggplant says, thoughts on JUCO transfer? The left tackle, Keyshawn Blackstock, is the best transfer of note, I would say. He's competing with Brandon Baldwin over their left tackle. They were not thrilled with Brandon Baldwin in the Penn State game at the end of the year. Baldwin came on for Jarrett Horst, did some good things, moves his feet laterally okay. They could use some more physicality out of him there. Blackstock came in, number 1 interior offensive line junior college player in the country. Michigan State looking at him as a tackle. 6'5", should be able to do it. Looked him in the spring game, looked okay. Got off to a little bit of a slow start in the spring, learning the system and all those things, but those 15 practices were valuable. And Kapilovic told me during the summer that he's expecting Blackstock and Ethan Boyd, the second string right tackle, to get playing time, to platoon with those guys. I don't know if it's going to be 50-50 in snaps or 70-30 or something like that. But if it's 70-30 and you outperform the starter, pretty soon it's 50-50, then you overtake them. That's possible. And Baldwin, he's feeling some competitive pressure. He's got to get better. It's a healthy situation there, but Blackstock, I hear, is doing okay. When I watched film, when I've seen a little bit of practice and so forth, looks like Blackstock is still second string. So Baldwin is still number 1, but Baldwin knows he needs to keep charging to hold him off. Baldwin was a JUCO transfer in his own right a couple years ago. J.J. McKay says, is Malcolm Jones Sr. watching? Yes, he is watching. Donald Person says, who's stepping up in the wide receiver room? I just mentioned that. Tim D says, Levitt might have some Josh Allen skill in him. Josh Allen, you know what? Josh Allen's bigger, though, right? But Levitt's got some running ability. Let's go back over to the mailbag. And by the way, that's Sleeping Bear Dunes and Lake Michigan behind me. If you're just joining us, there's been a flip, and Lake Michigan is now number 1 in the Great Lakes Power Rankings. So that's the news so far today here in SpartanMag Live. Now, as far as the mailbag over here, Sola in Westland, Michigan says, do you have any thoughts to share on any of the current 2024 verbal commitments in regard to their high school film? Anyone you are particularly excited about? I'd say the one I'm excited about is the running back, Anthony Carey, 5'11", 195, 4-star out of Tampa, number 305 in the country in the On3 industry rankings. On3 itself has him as a 3-star, and I disagree with that. I think he's a 4-star. I think he's got excellent jump cut quickness, one cut lateral cut to the outside, one cut elusiveness, mixed with very good speed. Does he have home run speed? Maybe. I'm still looking at it, but very good speed with one cut ability, good balance down the sideline. During spring football this year, they went from a 2-back under center power running offense to a shotgun slow read Wake Forest type of thing. So that's what they're going to be running this year, like a Wake Forest type of thing. It'll be interesting to see what his highlights look like coming out of that. He showed some toughness when taking on a safety in the highlight film. Not a guy maybe that's going to like bowl over an FBS linebacker, but he has some elusiveness and home run gears. Type of guy that if you give him good blocking, he's going to eat up yards. I like Anthony Carey. That'd be one guy that I'm pretty excited about if I'm Michigan State. The other 11 are I don't have any qualms with any of them. And Michigan State continues to recruit Jason Brown, the kid from Seattle, who's more of a squatty bowling ball type runner, downhill runner. And Jason Brown's a top 100, and he's ranked higher than Carey, but I like Carey better as a running back. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. Question number 6, Eric from Saginaw. His name is Saginaw Walleye 84. I appreciate that. Walleye in the Saginaw Bay. Not too bad. Lake Huron guy right there. He says, question. He's got a couple questions. He says, how is the development of Alex Van Sumeren coming along? Van Sumeren, a guy from, it's Crosswell, Lexington. Where's he from? Essexville Garber, which is Lake Huron country. Van Sumeren, he says he was the top guy in the 2022 class and seems to be getting lost in the shuffle with all the defensive tackles added in the portal. Is it possible he cracks the top 4 defensive tackle rotation at some point this year? Good question. Van Sumeren last year, and I talked about this in the VCast, I think. Or maybe I think it was in a story I did over at SpartanMag.com about some of the key position battles for preseason practice. And defensive tackle is a place with a lot of those battles this month. Defensive tackle is pretty stacked for Michigan State right now. And Van Sumeren's there. He's a redshirt freshman, played 4 games last year. And they preserved his red shirt, but they're a defensive tackle. You have Simeon Barrow coming back. He's like I wrote, he's a horse. And Derek Harmon, big guy, good. Maverick Hansen, senior, solid, proven. Then you go into the portal and you bring in Jalen Sami from Colorado, a guy that they coached at Colorado a few years ago. They were excited to go get him out of the portal. Sami's going to play. So that's 4 right there. So you could be a really good player and not crack those 4. They go to Florida State, bring in Jarrett Jackson, go to Liberty and bring in DeAndre Butler. Those guys are okay. I don't think they're better than Maverick Hansen. I don't think Van Sumeren's better than any of those guys. Jarrett Jackson only averaged about 11 snaps a game last year. He's 6'6", 300. He's big. He looks good. And he's got some ability that can turn on here and there. Can he do it every single day? It's his 3rd program. I'm not sure. They'll be fine. It's competitive there. So Van Sumeren, I was looking at him at practice the other day. And he looks wider. He looks thicker. I think he's added some weight. And I've not asked him that, and they've not put out a roster with updated weights. But I think he's added some weight, and he looks big. He's always had good quickness. Last year, he always had real good quickness in the camps. And that's why he was a 4-star. I mean, really good quickness for a big guy. Really good quickness. But that was in the T-shirt camps, right? In his high school schedule, they didn't play a lot of great competition. So he comes to the college level last year for the first time going against guys his size, older than him. And in terms of winning, with the hand fighting inside with power, struggled with that, as you'd expect. No big shock there for a teenager. Looked better in the spring game. Showed some progress there. So that's where he is right now. I would not put him above those 4 that I was mentioning. Does he get in the 2 deep? Not if those guys all stay healthy, I don't think. And he could be a good player, but he could be a good redshirt freshman 3rd stringer this year, which is that's where you want your program to be. Now, a lot of these guys are going to be moving on real soon. Jackson and Butler, they're going to be 2.5 string guys. Jalen Sami, transfer coming in from Colorado's got 1 year. Maverick Hansen might have one more year. I don't know if he'll come back or not. Harmon will be around, but Barrow, I think Barrow could be good enough to test the NFL waters. I'm pleasantly surprised and impressed that Michigan State still has Simeon Barrow. I'm sure that SEC schools came after that Georgia kid the last 2 off seasons to try to get him to go back home, but he's still a Spartan, and he's one of the more underrated players in the Big Ten. So those players are going to be moving on. You got Van Sumeren coming up, and I don't know what else. That's why they got to recruit some defensive tackles right now. They got to get some. You don't want to get in a situation where you're always relying on going into the discard pile to get defensive tackles. And by discard pile, I mean transfer portal. I'm not calling Jalen Sami a discard. He was in a situation at Colorado where Louis Vuitton cowboy hats coming in and getting rid of players left and right, and it just wasn't his scene, so he got out of there. But Sami, I went back and watched some of his film. He was honorable mention all Pac-12 2 years ago. I watched him. He's sturdy against as a two-gap guy. He can take on double teams. Not a guy that's going to defeat a block and run something down from what I've seen, even though they praised the one play he made back in 2019 when he's a personal protector on the punt team. Punt returner got out, and Sami chased him down and made the tackle, game-saving tackle. Got to be an athlete to do that. But I have to say, what I've seen out of him, I've not really seen that type of someone who's going to beat somebody and get upfield or go sideline to sideline. Maybe he has it in him. Maybe the strength staff will get that out of him. I'm not sure, but they're happy to have him on the team. He's a team player. They're excited about him. Getting back to Eric Saginaw Walleye, he says, do you envision any possible scenario that pushes the quarterback battle into the first 2 weeks of the season, or is it more likely a starter will be declared before week 1? I think a starter will be declared before week 1, and we won't hear about it until kickoff. But the team will know in the last 5 practices who the starter is. That's the way it was when it was Peyton Thorne against Russo. They kept it quiet, and it never leaked out. And Thorne got the start, it's kind of what we guessed, but we didn't know. I think it's going to be Thorne, but he's got to do well the rest of this month. He's got to do well in the 2 scrimmages. But I think that they will know with 5 practices to go, if not 7. And then we'll find out right around kickoff. Now, if things struggle after a week or two, can the other guy get in there, and can the competition carry on into the season? I think that's possible. Question number 3, what's the formula for beating Washington this year? Their only losses last year were in shootouts, but won some close games against Oregon and Oregon State by narrow margins when they were outgained on ground and lost time of possession battle. Good question. I'll have to go back and watch those games against Oregon and Oregon State. Maybe I'll have time to do that. I'm not sure. By then, Washington, by the time Michigan State plays Washington, the Huskies will have played a couple games. I don't know if they will have played anyone of note. But, Washington's offense, they bring back so much talent at receiver, and Michael Penix. Last year before the game in the pre-snap read, I was watching them against whoever it was they played early in the season. I guess Kent State and Portland State. I know there was a couple of walk-ons, but Penix was perfect. I'm watching it. I'm like, that guy's as good as C.J. Stroud. He's better than C.J. Stroud. And in the pre-snap read, I said he's every bit as good, maybe better. Internally, I really thought he was better. That was a stretch at the time. Stroud was good, but I thought Penix was better. And when healthy, I still think that. I know the guy at North Carolina is a great quarterback. The guy at USC is a great quarterback. It's a very good year for quarterbacks. I think Penix is right there. I know the guy at USC is special. The guy at North Carolina is really good too. Penix is right there. He's awesome. Those wide receivers are awesome. Caleb DeBoer is a great offensive mind. I don't throw that word around a lot, but he looks really good here in his young career. Did some good things in Indiana, is doing good things there. I thought they did some good things against Michigan State with pre-snap motions. I thought they caught Michigan State off balance all day with those motions. That was early in the season. Did that surprise them? I don't know. But Michigan State will be ready for that this time. Now does Washington come out and have something else they're not ready for? We'll have to see. But as good as Penix is, you can be a good defense and Washington's still scoring 35 points on you. If you are a B- defense, they're probably scoring 40. So, you got to stop the run. The run is not what they do, but you got to stop the run against anybody, obviously. But maybe playing at home, Michigan State can get ultra inspired and everybody raises it and plays over their head. I don't know. Michigan State would have had a better chance if that had been a noon kickoff to make Washington play at 9 o'clock Pacific time. Didn't happen. So what do they have to do? Gosh, be prepared to score 41 points somehow. Probably the first step. Don't let them score 50 is the second step. It's always possible. It's college football. who knows? Question 7, Brian from Flushing says, I think Noah Kim is pretty much the starter at quarterback, but I'm more intrigued with this running back battle more than anything. He says a dominant run game makes the quarterback's job much easier and keeps the defense off the field. I would agree with that. He says, if the season started tomorrow, who's your running back, and is there a 1,000-yard rusher on this roster in your opinion? If the season started tomorrow, I get the sense that, maybe it'll be Berger, but they've told Berger, you have to come back and earn it and re-earn it. And then, they thought Berger was okay last year, 600 yards plus rushing, was better as the season went along. He's added about 7 good strong pounds. I was talking to Berger a little bit on Monday after practice, and he pointed out something that I've pointed out, that he was still a relatively new quarterback or new running back last year, still relatively new to the sport, in that, he played in 2020, the COVID-shortened season, 3 or 4 or 5 games for Wisconsin. The year after that, he played 2 or 3 games and was pretty much dismissed from the team. I think it was mutual, but wasn't great situation. So last year was his first, legit 12-game season. And he was better at some things later in the year. So he needs to continue to improve, because there are people that are impressed with Nathan Carter. Little, strong dude that runs hard. Does Carter have the durability to hammer it in there? I suspect it's going to be Berger, and it wouldn't surprise me if Carter's a little bit more productive in the first game. Is there a 1,000-yard rusher on this team? I think probably not, because they're going to share the load so much that it's going to be hard for someone to gain 1,000. But if you took one guy, if you took Berger and you put him in Minnesota and he got all the carries, he could probably gain 1,000. If you took Carter and he stayed healthy and you put him in Minnesota and he got all the carries, he'd probably gain 1,000. If you took Mangum and put him in Minnesota and he got all the carries and he stayed healthy, he could probably gain 1,000. I think all those 3 of those guys are capable of gaining 1,000 for a team that is committed to running the ball, maybe to their own detriment at times. They're capable of doing it, but I don't think any of those guys get 1,000 this year. But I think by committee, it could be a productive group, especially if the tight end can block. I think the offensive line's going to block well enough. Tight end blocking was always springing leaks last year, so that needs to get better. Don from DeWitt says, what's the most positive development you've seen so far this year? I'm going to say the depth thing. Everybody's talking about depth, but it's not a joke. I just mentioned there's 3 or 4 running backs going for that job. There's a lot of tight ends going for the job. Some of them are unproven. There's a lot of wide receivers with talent. They're unproven, yes. I'm not saying they're great, but there's a lot of them. There's a couple quarterbacks. Unproven, but a couple of them that are legit. There's a lot of defensive tackle. Just talked about that. Van Sumeren might be 3rd string or 4th string. There's a lot of them. Linebacker, you're looking at Brule, Nateote, and Hall as probably backup guys. Looking at Angelo Gross, a 2nd stringer. Kimbrough used to be a starter. He's probably maybe a 3rd stringer. DBs, you got some guys you haven't seen play yet, like Ade Willie, Caleb Coley. They're hovering around. They're going to be knocking on the door. Dylan Tatum, got to find a home. He's got some ability. Terry Roberts comes in from Iowa. Was okay there. Special teams guy. Transferred to Miami. Didn't stick. Miami wants to play man-to-man. He's not a man-to-man guy. Was at Iowa for 3 or 4 years, playing the cover 2 that they play there. Other versions of zone. Samar Melvin, same thing. Wasn't really in the playing group at Wisconsin. Might be a 3rd stringer here. I don't know. But there's just a lot of players. When you talk about, Saban used to talk about the bottom 40 indicates how strong your team is. I think the bottom 40 has definitely gotten better. I don't know if there's any primetime warriors, like Saban used to say, they're going to take it over. I don't know if Montori Foster and Christian Fitzpatrick are going to be or if they're going to play like 1st string wide receivers should in the Big Ten. Can Mosley step up and go from a 35 catch guy to a 50 catch guy? I don't know. Is Noah Kim ready to be better than Peyton Thorne? I don't know. It's possible. Can Nathan Carter be better than Berger? I don't know. It's possible. Is Malik Carr ready to block like a Big Ten tight end in this offense needs to block? I don't know, but it's possible. Can Evan Morris come in as a 2nd tight end and block like a Big Ten tight end? I don't know, but it's possible. Masunis made some nice catches. Is he ready to? He's a redshirt freshman from Arizona, tight end. Is he ready to get on the field, do a couple things? I don't know. It's possible. Jalen Franklin, I think, looked like a good blocker in the spring scrimmage. Didn't play much at Wisconsin. Coming in now, I don't know about his hands, but can he get in there and block some people? They need some blockers. Can he do it? I don't know, but it's possible. There's a lot of if possible guys in there. And a lot of those guys have pretty good frames. When Tucker says he likes the size of the guys and they just look different, I appreciate that. I know what he's talking about. Now, can they get it done and close out victories? I'm not sure, but They've got a little more horsepower in the engine right now, top to bottom. I believe that. So the storyline is depth. All the coaches are saying it. The players are saying it. I think it's factual, and I think there is more competition top to bottom all over the place. Does that result in wins? Got to finish. You can't make any, if you're in tight games, you can't be making any mistakes. Clock management, play calling's got to be sharp, all those things to get the thing across the finish line. They could be in position to steal some games and earn them. That's why they play them. I think that they've got something to work with. It's going to be interesting. Question 9, AJT from South Philadelphia says, what guy on the roster are we not talking about right now that will be the buzz of the non-conference season? Someone on the roster that we're not talking about. So who are we not talking about? We've talked about a lot of guys today, but in terms of the royal we, over at SpartanMag, we've written about a lot of guys, but I don't know if people are talking about Nathan Carter enough. I know we're talking about him over at SpartanMag, but the guy's got a little something. Montori Foster going to be starting receiver. Are we talking about him enough? Are we talking about Jacoby Windman enough? I mean, he was great last September, right, as a defensive end. Moved to linebacker, was pretty good. Missed the last 4 games after the tunnel incident at Michigan Stadium. But Windman is not an unknown. You know all about him. He was national defensive player of the week twice or something at 2 different positions. But maybe we're not talking about Jacoby Windman enough. Caleb Coley, Charles Brantley, are we overlooking him? A guy that's played a couple of years already. Simeon Barrow is a guy, like I said, most underrated player in the Big Ten, one of the most underrated. I'm going to say Jacoby Windman. I don't think many people are talking about him. Maybe they should. Is that strange? He got more press than anybody last September, but I could say him. I could say maybe Montori. Well, I don't know. Christian Fitzpatrick, maybe? Christian Fitzpatrick. But here's some good things about him. C. Brian from Austin, Texas says, in your opinion, why should we have confidence in this coaching staff? He says, what have you seen, if anything, that's different, improved from the previous 3 years? I just mentioned the thing about, going outside the box with some of the coaching decisions last year, some of which didn't work, so they changed it. I think that's not a bad thing. He is a guy that, Tucker was coming off an 11-2 season, had the big contract. He had the freedom and the confidence to try something outside the box. Didn't work as well as he'd like to. So now Brandon Jordan's gone. Mel's no longer the corners coach. Salgado coming in as the new corners coach. I'm hearing good things about him from people outside the program before he got here. Tucker says they've had coaching upgrades. And I would agree with that. And in some ways, he's taking ownership that himself coaching corners might not have been the greatest thing. So they're learning as they go. They're learning as they go with NIL. They're learning as they go with the transfer portal. There's nothing in the coaching manual that told them how to handle that stuff. He did know he wanted to change the look of the roster in terms of height and weight. And they brought in some guys with the right height and weight. Didn't end up being great players. But more and more, there's more of them there. Now you got competitions. It should yield some pretty good athletic specimens. I'm not saying great ones, but good ones. Now, this is the 5th time I've said it. They got to get it stapled together, all the screws tightened, same pageness, pointed forward, taking care of the ball. Maybe win some football games. So, C. Brian continues to say, granted, there are a couple new faces this season, and there's no way, is there, that the injury situation will rival what was experienced last year, and yet Hazleton remains. He's arguably guided a trifecta of the worst defenses in the Big Ten during his tenure here. C. Brian says, I'm in the camp of, I'll believe it when I see it about this staff. What do you think? Those are all fair comments. Hazleton had some good years at Kansas State, and, he's got to show some progress this year. Last year, year 3, Mulligan with all the injuries. Understand why they struggled so badly on that side of the ball. I mean, coming out of that Akron game, you lose Xavier Henderson and Darius Snow and Slade. I mean, arguably your best player at all 3 levels and the smartest guys. Well, I don't know about Slade. I don't know who's smart on the defensive line, but Snow and Henderson for sure. And Bogle gets hurt. They all get hurt. Pietrowski got hurt right away. So, and they just kept getting hurt. Like I said, 27 different starters. So, I mean, Harry Houdini could have been the defensive coordinator, and they weren't going to get that thing straightened out. I used to say a biblical figure when making that statement, but I don't want to do that. Newt Rockne could have been the defensive coordinator and wouldn't have been able to get much done there. Excuse me. Who's a better one to use for hyperbole? Buddy Ryan. Is Buddy Ryan still who's like the defensive coach of all time? George Perlis? Nick Saban could have been the defensive coordinator last year with 27 injuries, and they would not have been great on defense. They would not have been good. Michigan State, I think, was number 79. No, they're like six. That was last year. They were number 79 in the country in yards allowed per play. If Saban had been coach with 27 injuries, maybe they would have been 65. So when you say I'll believe it when I see it, that's fair. That's fair. All right, let's go back over here to the comments area before I lose my voice and have to shut it all down. Donald Person says, Kim is him. That's an answer to Fleet, who says Hauser is the howitzer. Nice creativity there, gentlemen. No Cap says, thoughts on the improved depth size on the defensive interior through the portal, and thoughts on Washington coming to East Lansing week 3. We've already touched on those things, so I'm not going to go over them again. No Cap, I like your logo. My man's got a logo. Appreciate that. J.K. McKay with his German Shepherd from the Keweenaw says, I like Kim, but Hauser looks good too. Chris Joseph says, why is there a ref on the sidelines? Talking about the practice video we showed earlier. There's a ref on the sidelines because, they have refs there to call holding penalties and, illegal formation penalties. The referees, they get paid to come to practice. They go to practices all over the country. And the referees like to show up at practice too because it gets them sharp. You'll see the referees on the sideline working on their quickness, getting into angles and things like that. So, and, when they get into scrimmaging, they'll throw flags. They won't stop the play. They'll just throw a flag and the coaches acknowledge it or whatever. And that's why they're there. Sea-Dog says the running game has got to help out more this year. The lack of run attack put the offense in too many third and longs last season. I would agree with that. I think Berger was just okay as a ball carrier last year. I think he'll be a little bit better. Excuse me. Those around him will be better too. Gosh, what's going on here? What do we have here? What if I did this? Anyway, Paul Hodgins is checking in late from Mackinac City. I like Mackinac City. 12 hours on Mackinac City. I stopped in a bar to have a brew. Met a girl and had a few drinks, and I told her what I decided to do. Dating myself. Sorry about that. That was weak. J.J. McKay from the Keweenaw says, should be a much improved running attack this year with the depth of the offensive line. Offensive line needs to stay healthy, and I think they're going to be pretty good. I'm not saying they're going to punch a hole in Ohio State or even Iowa maybe, but combination of all of it, if you get your crap together, Michigan State's got a chance to be a pretty solid team. Week in and week out. They've got a chance. Noah Sprunger, great to have him here. Intern extraordinaire for SpartanMag.com. He says, make sure to hit the thumbs up button and subscribe. Appreciate that, Noah. Spartan AG 999 says, will our defense be competent this year? Gotta hope so. Last season was painful to watch. Let's go back to the mailbag. A similar question. Fish and Dave from Midland says, will the defense play winning football this year? That's his question. Spartan Ag 999 says, will our defense be competent? Spartan Ag wants competent defense. Fish and Dave wants winning defense. I'm thinking winning defense, I'll just throw out an arbitrary number, as being in the top 50 in the country in yards allowed per play. Not scoring defense, not total defense, not rush defense, not sacks. Yards allowed per play. That's the metric. And last year, Michigan State was number 79 in the country with all the injuries. Top 50 is more than half of the teams, which should give you more than half wins, put you above 500 theoretically. I look at last year, there were some good teams outside the top 50. South Carolina was like number 87, and they had a good season. Wake Forest was 84 in yards allowed per play. They had a good season. Those in the top 50. I thought Minnesota was a good, well-coached, solid defensive team with a smattering of good talent and a good quality 11 that played well together with a good hard-nosed middle linebacker in the middle. Minnesota last year was number 28 in the country in yards allowed per play at 4.9. Now, Minnesota played slow. They played a lot of weak offenses. So in total defense, Minnesota was like top 5 in the country. Their defense was good, but not that good. I think they were top 10 or something. But yards per play, they were 28, which is still good. Michigan State's schedule is much tougher than Minnesota's was last year. This year, Minnesota's defense or schedule gets a little tougher. But can Michigan State have a top 50 defense in yards allowed per play? That's winning football, in my opinion. That's competent football, in my opinion. SpartanMag wants competency. Fish and Day wants winning football. I'm going to say yes, they can be top 50 in yards allowed per play. I said it. Yes, they can. Will they? I don't know. Front seven's going to be good enough. Secondary is a little bit young. Got to get on the same page. New corners coach. Can't have too much volume in towards paralysis to analysis, analysis to paralysis. You can't have them thinking too much. Know what to do, play fast. Know what to do, play fast. Every coach says it. Michigan State guys on defense last 3 years, have they known what to do? Some of them. And if that continues to be a problem, at some point you stop blaming the players. So Tucker's got to keep an eye on that, do what needs to be done. They're on the clock. Hazelton's on the clock. He knows it. It's tough business. He's well paid. He knows it. And he's a good person. He's well respected in the coaching ranks. And he's confident he can get it done. He's gotten it done before. Got to get it done in the Big Ten now. DJV says, Natayote on defense. Has he recovered from a spring game injury? I don't know. He was out there last week, did not have his helmet on. So he did take a pretty tough lower body hit in that spring game. But they don't say anything. People are ready when they're ready. They don't give injury details. But I'm not sure he's full. I don't know. He's running. He looked okay. Just not sure he was all the way back for just press go day one. Old Tuck, the bell cow. He's in late, just got off the lake in Ludington, casting for Northerns. That's what I'm talking about, Old Tuck. Old Tuck is from Texas. He's back home again in Michigan, over there in Lake Michigan in Ludington, casting for Northern Pike. Are you talking about Lake Michigan, talking about the big lake or some other lake? If you're going for Northern, it's probably an inland lake, right? Because Lake Michigan doesn't have a lot of northern pike, right? It's more of a lake trout, some salmon. Not as many walleye in Lake Michigan, right? There's walleye in Lake Erie, and there's some in Lake Huron. So Northerns. Northerns frighten me a little bit. All those teeth. If I was on the boat, Old Tuck, and I hooked one, got him up near the boat, I think I'd probably let you handle him. JJ McKay from the Keweenaw. It's very up north centric. SpartanMag Live today. We're hearing from Mackinac City, Manistee, Keweenaw. Somebody said Mackinac Island, didn't they? And Old Tuck's back up north, back in town. He's in Texas now, and I got to believe he's loving the weather around here today. 80 degrees, nice cool breeze. Old Tuck's had several gin martinis at Barnhart's restaurant. Good for you. Gin is a good thing when done in moderation. Tanqueray tonic is. I'm not a very good drinker at all, but Tanqueray tonic is refreshing at times. So I will give you the thumbs up on that, Old Tuck. Barnhart's Restaurant, I just Googled it. That's in Ludington. So good for you, man. Slim Pickens says, can't wait for Spartan football. JJ McKay from Keweenaw says, Ludington is a great fishing jump-off point. Jason G says, I believe we won't see number 23 play, very unfortunately, until 2024. Talking about Darius Snow, and I think you're probably right. Old Tuck says, let's go, men. Time to start trading paint in the high cathedral called Spartan Stadium. BTC Chris Foulin says, if Hauser gets the job, do you think Levitt transfers? It's a good question. Not yet. But it's so sad that we have to think in those terms, isn't it? By the way, I don't know if Old Tuck was probably here to get the latest rankings. If not, there's the rankings again. And there's me at Lake Superior a couple weeks ago. Like I said, just at the mouth of the Two-Hearted River as it comes into Lake Superior. Beautiful spot. Beautiful. Not everybody would think it's beautiful, but it's the edge of the earth there. There's just like no one lives there. Campground. But there's nobody there. There's no electricity. It's practically Siberia, but it's beautiful. And those rocks, the rocks at Lake Superior. If you're a rock person. I'm not a rock person. I saw them. I'm like, no, I'm a rock person. I get it now. Two-Hearted right there is real nice. I did a little bit of casting in the Two-Hearted. But Great Lakes Power Rankings, in case you're late, Lake Michigan after 211 weeks at number 2 is now number 1. So that's big news here today. So it's a big deal. Big deal. I know that Old Tuck is a Lake Michigan guy, so he's probably happy about that now. All right. What else we have here? John Elke says, listen to X's and Bros on the Michigan Sports Network. I believe I've heard Comp a time or two. I'm not familiar with that, but that's a creative name. That's a good name. Mike Webster says, it's so sad to see what happened to the Big Ten with a realignment. I agree with that. It makes me a little nervous. JJ McKay, 6-man-1, says, yeah, not a fan of taking on more teams, especially on the left coast. Yeah, it's not great. Like I said, I mean, a lot of people have been saying it's going to come down to 2 major conferences eventually, and I've been talking about this for a long time. I think it was the former president of LSU is now the president of Oregon. I don't know if he's still there, but he said about 5 years ago that we're going to end up with 2 college football conferences, Fox and ESPN. And that's kind of what's going on. And the bigger that the Fox conference gets, you can call it the Big Ten if you want, but the bigger it gets, it ceases to be the Big Ten. It's not the Big Ten. It's just the AFC North or whatever you want to call it. And Michigan State's affiliation with the Big Ten used to be special. It still is. But the more teams that come in, the less special it is, and it just becomes it's the Fox League. And it's a deal where those programs had to leave because they're either going to stay and make $20 million or go and make $60 million. And with some out the door, they had to leave, and it's kind of sad that way. Andy Staples, I was listening to his podcast on On3. He does the Andy Staples show on On3 right now. This is all part of the On3 network, SpartanMag is. And he was a little too excited about it. I was getting a little nervous. I'm like, Andy, that's not a good idea. I don't like this. He was talking about, but he kind of likes it for parity's sake in the future. He was talking about that the bigger that it gets and you get the 2 mega conferences, then at some point, if you have 30 teams in the Big Ten, he didn't say it this way, but if you have 30 teams in the Big Ten, it's not the Big Ten anymore. It's just a big national conglomerate. And at that point, do the best of the best have the temptation to go independent from both sides? Michigan, Ohio State, Notre Dame, Penn State, Georgia, Alabama, Florida, Texas, Oklahoma, Tennessee, maybe Nebraska, USC. I don't know who else is in there. Do they just go independent and have a huge television contract and leave the others? Does Michigan State go with that group? I don't know, but the direction he was going with those thoughts not good. And he was kind of excited about it. I'm like, dude, that's not exciting. DJV1855 says, since 1938, Michigan State, 6 national championships, Michigan only 1. I think Michigan had a couple in the 40s, the Tom Harmon team. Did someone say, was Tom Harmon from Gary, Indiana? Did someone tell me he graduated dead last in his high school class? Was that in Scheming in the Big Ten, that one book? I'll have to double check that. Mark Webster, nothing against that. I just didn't really go along with what, I don't know. Mark Webster says, the 4 Pac-12 teams joining is bad news for Michigan State, very different than Rutgers and Maryland. The balance is majorly upset now. I agree with Mark. It's not great for Michigan State, in my opinion. Trevor Thompson says, Kevin Thomas wrote a great article on the 1978 team and Kurt Gibson. I learned a lot. I'd have to see that. Trevor, send that to me in an email. I'd like to read that. I don't know what you're talking about on that. 07 says, we're going to have to do better than ranking 40 in recruiting to compete with the big boys in the new Big Ten. Probably right. You need attrition to have scholarship room to have a top 20 class, usually. Unless you're getting a couple of 5 stars and a lot of 4 stars, which Michigan State's not, which is not easy to do. Because they're 700 miles from East Lansing, and down there they're commanding a lot of NIL. Michigan State is a player in NIL, but not to the point where they can just like outbid, everybody every time. Tim D says Warren Moon was great in Edmonton. Yeah, he was. For the Elks. They're called the Elks now. I know a little bit about the CFL. I'm a Ticats fan. Eric M says, I'm about 30 minutes from live, and I just heard Comp say, we don't play that. Yeah. 30 minutes from what? Oh, yeah. Thank you. You have to be a certain age to get that one. DJ1855 says, East-West divisions are bad for Michigan State. Tim Hughes says, go green from Traverse City. Very much an up-north-centric SpartanMag Live tonight. Appreciating that. Mark Webster says, just think of all the hangover games coming after those West Coast trips. Hopefully they send the West Coasters here in November, but they probably won't. You're right. There's going to be a lot of ebb and flow there. Malcolm Jones Sr. says, hello, people. Got in late. All right. I'm gonna scan over this a little bit. Chucky Houston says, Michigan's always overrated every year. ESPN rated them over Georgia and TCU last year and number 2 this year. I really think the top 4 is going to be Georgia, Ohio State, Alabama, Penn State. Point well made. I do think Michigan's got that easy schedule, a lot of talent. I think they're going to accumulate wins. And I think Donovan Edwards is going to be the September Heisman guy, and deservedly so. He's an excellent player and a very good receiver as a running back. I don't know if Corum, how many carries he gets. McCarthy's going to get some attention, but I would look for Donovan Edwards as the dark horse Heisman candidate. I don't know if anyone's talking about him for the Heisman. That probably makes some people throw up a little bit. I apologize. Mark Webster says that the last normal season of college football coming up, got to soak it in. It's feeling a little depressing. We don't want to be depressing here, but Michael Gregory says front 7 will keep us in games. Mark Webster says schedule is brutal. 5 really tough games. Crossover games not ideal. No Northwestern or Purdue. All right, Malcolm Jones says, I'll be in Michigan August 31st. I need someone to show me around in Michigan. Malcolm Jones has spoken. We got any takers on that? We'll have to look into that. Tim D says Canada is loaded with long snappers. Tim D from Toronto is coming with a lot of Canadian football references. Appreciate that. Playboy Sparty says, I think 7-5 is most likely, but I would be very happy with 8-4, as you should. Mark Webster says Michigan State has to beat Maryland, Nebraska, Minnesota. That gets them bowling in a relatively good season. Fans can't stomach falling to Tua Jr. and PJ again. All right, what do we have here? Oh, Playboy Sparty says Calumet is a great place. Home of George Gipp. George Gipp played at Old College Field in 1918, and they lost to Michigan Agricultural College on Old College Field. I think that was the day ROTC had a little thing at halftime celebrating that World War I had come to an end that day. They beat Notre Dame, beat New Rockne on Old College Field. J. McKay says, I think more Penn State fans will go due to Detroit Airport so close and more hotel rooms available. J. McKay says, yes, going to see a friend play guitar at Calumet Theater tomorrow night, 7:30. I live 7 miles north of Calumet, grew up in East Lansing. Grew up in East Lansing, I live in Calumet, Copper Country. I've not been up there in a long time. I usually stop. I usually don't get any further west than Munising, but I'm coming up to the Keweenaw sometime, maybe next year. J.J. McKay says Lake Superior is the greatest of the Great Lakes. You have a vote, and there's Lake Superior right there. I respect your opinion. Superior's different. Sand dudes are OP. I don't know what that means. Superior easily, Webster says. The water is so pure and it's clear, soft sand. Train Beach, phenomenal. The sand is very soft, sugary soft up there. It's different. The sand is different up there. And when I was Lake Superior a couple weeks ago, it was kind of warm. Like I said, there were people snorkeling out there looking at the rocks. I heard that Lake Superior is warming up. I don't want to get into political things or anything, but it's been very cold in the past, but it was not cold a couple weeks ago when I was out there wading around in there. It's different, though. I mean, you feel Lake Michigan and Lake Superior are different. Different. And I can see why someone would prefer either. And then Lake Huron is beautiful also. Lake Huron is beautiful, and the people are nice, and it's just a slower type of thing. They don't have the beautiful dunes like Lake Michigan does, at least not on the Michigan coast. There are dunes on the Canadian Lake Huron, which people don't realize, and that comes into effect with the Great Lakes rankings. But those places with those nice beaches, because the west prevailing winds, the dunes build up on the west side of the landmass, but they're not as populated. The other thing about the Lake Michigan, when you get up there in the beautiful places, there's less of them. There's just a little bit less of them. There's more of an out-of-state influence there. And I mean that negatively. I'm not going to call everybody fudgies. I'm a fudgy. I'm a troll. I'm also a Michigander, and there's more of an out-of-state influence here than here. Just saying. All these things factor into the rankings. Playboy Sparty says, I was a Lake Huron guy my entire life. Never really went to the west side. I have to say, after vacations in Petoskey and Harbor Springs, Lake Michigan is number one for me. It is beautiful over there. No question about it. It's getting more and more crowded. It is beautiful. Yeah, it was a shock. Brian V. Down goes Lake Huron. Tim D says, born in Sarnia, Lake Huron has to be number one. Sarnia. So Tim D's from Toronto. Born in Sarnia, probably a big Sting fan. Sarnia Sting, not from the Police. OHL. Did I hear the OHL Memorial Cup's going to be in Michigan next spring? I heard some buzz about it, and I didn't really look into it any deeper. It was in Windsor 5 years ago. The OHL, Ontario Hockey League, the Canadian Hockey Leagues, it's 16 to 20 juniors. The CHL Memorial Cup and the World Junior Championships, that is Canada's college football. Junior hockey is Canada's college football, if that makes sense. There's Sarnia Sting fans, Windsor Spitfire fans, Peterborough Petes, and across the board. Sudbury Wolves, all of them. And been around for a number of years, tradition. You know, they got kids relocate and go to high school. They relocate and go to high school. Those players, they get drafted when they're 16, NHL players. Then the best of the best play for Canada in the World Juniors every Christmas holiday break. It's a big deal. Windsor won the thing a couple years ago, and they sold that place out. I thought I heard that which I assume would be because Saginaw's got an OHL team. It's Saginaw, Michigan, but they've got an Ontario Hockey League team, and Flint has an OHL team. And Muskegon has a team, but it's not an OHL team. I think it's a USHL team, American Amateur Juniors. Anyway, I thought I heard something about that next spring in May. I need to go check that out. I've never been to a game in Sarnia. I've never been to a game in Windsor, but it's on my bucket list coming soon. My hockey dad days are over, so I've got a few more weekend days opening up. Lobdell Lake, Jason G says. Malcolm Jones Jr. says, I love to visit lakes when I come there. Yeah, you know, Lansing has, Lake Lansing's okay, but the Great Lakes, we're a good 60 miles from the lakes. August 31st, Grand Haven, Malcolm Jones, that's probably where you're going to want to go. There's traffic, but it's nice. That's probably, it'd be about an hour and 30 from East Lansing if you can do a trip within a trip. Yeah, like Webster says, Lake Michigan is not far, an hour and 20 probably to Grand Haven. JJ McKay says like an hour. I drove out to Grand Haven one time with some friends of mine in a Jeep back when I was like 25 years old. And yeah, let's go to Grand Haven. It's like that first nice day of the year, like May 2nd. You have a couple of outlier nice days in April, but it's May 2nd. Hey, let's go. It's nice. It's 78. Sun's out. Let's go. We're going. Come on. Top down, Jeep. Drove out there, had some refreshments. Got a little something to eat. Great, beach, whatever. Get back. It's dark. Let's go back. Didn't bring the top with them. Drove back without a top on the way back, and it was probably 59 with the wind. Froze on the drive back. Got a lot of Canadians, too, in here tonight. All right, let's see. Got a lot of comments here. I can't go through them all, but we're going to wrap it up because we're almost done. But I appreciate everybody that's posting, and we don't have a lot. Appreciate that. What is this? Just in time to ban Jaw LB. Kyle Weiss says, do you think Michigan State may surprise everyone this year as the last two recruiting classes come into prominence this year? 22 and 23 classes are both top 25. It's going to take a little longer for the 22 and 23 classes to come into prominence, as you say. Alex James representing the Niagara Ice Dogs. Playboy Sparty says trying to make it to a London playoff game this year. London Knights, I think. Playboy Sparty says, I went to a playoff Sarnia Sting game against the Spitfires. The OHL is an elite hockey experience. I missed the Plymouth Whalers. Anyway, Kyle Weiss getting a little bit tired of the lake talk. Got an Oregon State fan with some interesting... we're running late on this. I can't get into it, but I appreciate that he posted. And Kyle, I feel you. And Kyle bringing it back, asking about the recruiting classes, and I just mentioned what I thought about that. All right, we are going to, I got rid of that troll thing. Sometimes I don't see it that quickly. Let's get back here to the mailbag, and then we'll wrap it up. I think that might be it, actually. I think we're done with the mailbag. We had a few questions that were left over. Sparty's Island, South Carolina, asked about the tight ends. And, talking about how they're going to use tight ends more this year. I don't know if they're going to use them more. They need to block better. But if you look at last year, Michigan State had, decent numbers from tight ends. I mean, Barker, who was inconsistent, sometimes missed blocks and sometimes didn't run the right route, seemed like. Had 21 catches, Barker did. Carr had 16. Tyler Hunt had 15. That's 52 catches by the tight ends last year. So to say they're going to get the ball more, I don't know. 52 is quite a bit. So I don't know. Anyway, hey, we've been going at it for 2.5 hours. Appreciate everybody being here, getting back into first week of fall camp. We had some mistakes. Tempo was good, needs to be better. Comparoni needs to do a better job making sure that the audio button is on at the beginning. And Comparoni's got to spend less time mumbling about the posts in the comments area, even though he's understandably interested in the comments and sometimes gets a little sidetracked. Sometimes Comparoni forgets that he's on the air, people are watching. So Comparoni's got to do better. But after week 1, we saw some good things here at SpartanMag Live, and we can do better. And we just want to stay healthy and come back and get it going again. But I appreciate everybody coming in. Appreciate all the comments and all the likes. Go ahead and subscribe to SpartanMag.com. Subscribe to this channel. Give us a like. Go over to SpartanMag.com. We want to have you as a subscriber. We appreciate all the support and all the posts. And go over to SpartanMag and chime in over that underground bunker. And we look to see you over there soon. Again, great to see you here on SpartanMag Live. We'll check you out soon. We got coverage coming up. We have defensive coaches speaking on Wednesday. You can find that coverage over at SpartanMag.com. Until then, everybody enjoy the lakes. Be good and be kind to one another. Help each other. Help one another enjoy the rest of the summer and have a great day. Thanks a lot. SpartanMag.com.